Oh no. Buenos días. Muchas gracias. ¿Qué onda? Speak this common good. Mala cultura. Óigame, un momento. Amigos, ¿cómo van? No. Este no es. Este es. We don't say Feliz Navidad anymore. We say Happy Holidays. Pa-pa-pa-pa-pa. You only know social white guy Spanglish? Está bien, amigo. ¿Qué pasó, homie? Todo bien, todo suave. Muchos hornos. Muchos hornos. You guys remember that skit? Do you guys remember this shit? I died laughing. One second. Es hora para muchos hornos. Muchos hornos. Wait a second. We'll play the rest of this song, but I just want you guys to hear what I'm talking about. When I first heard this Family Guy sketch, I'm like, this is true.
This is a very shocking family circus.
Es el tiempo para muchos
hornos.
Muchos hornos. Muchos hornos.
Ay, 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 ay. I mean, sometimes is it not right? Is it not right sometimes? I'm not trying to hate or anything, homies. Wow. Yeah, the VODs are all up, Faith. Thank you so much for the super chat. Huge super chat. Faith. Amazing viewer, Faith. They're all on the unlisted playlist. I stopped membering them because I love you all. It's just, you just gotta go there. Ba, ba, da, ba, ba, ba. That's for like algo for the main vids. Do. Yo! Another day in your graces. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in this beautiful Wednesday, my guys. It is Wednesday, isn't it? Surely not. Surely not already. We are getting into the happy holidays season. And I don't want to hear any Merry Christmases or Feliz Navidades. Not here. Here we are. We're PC in this house. We're woke in this household. What is dead may never die. Woke has been reborn on the third day. So if you guys come in with that Christmas shit, I don't know what to do. That is triggering for a lot of us. Just kidding. You guys say whatever you want. Listen, welcome. Are you excited? Are you winning? Are you winning in life? Do you have good friends, good people around you? Who has a brother? Raise your hand if you have a brother. Any brother havers in the chat? This one goes out to all the brothers. Yeah, I got a brother, says Ziri. If you have a brother, why don't you take your phone? I'm going to do it too. And send a quick text to your brother. And if you have more than one, you can send more than one text. Yo, what up, my brother? Love you, dog. It's for all the brothers. I'll text both of them. So now that you've all messaged your brother, got an extreme MAGA QAnon hermana. Wait, really? No one talks about the extreme MAGA QAnon hermanas. Fuck the sisters, huh? No, today's about the brothers. Tomorrow could be about the sisters. Oh wait, we have a response. Yeah, they're like, "Are you good? Are you okay? Are you?" Okay, that shows. Never mind. Yeah, everything good. Isn't that always how it goes? You're like, "Hey, what's up? Are you dead? Are you dying? Why are you reaching out?" What are we talking about, folks? A lot of things to talk about. Another day in corrupt America, one of the most corrupt countries that's ever been, one of the most insanely corrupt countries that we've ever had under current leadership, as currently configured. And a lot of things to discuss politically, legally, but also what's going on with our conservatives. Something is wrong. Something is definitely wrong. Have you ever seen like Spy Kids 3D? Where they go in like the virtual world? Let me know if you've seen that movie. Laura Loomer is getting a 6-figure salary for reporting for the Department of War. Treason on the commentary agenda yet? We are going to talk about treason a little bit. We'll be talking about some legal stuff with treason, with war crimes. So believe it or not. Believe it or not. Grok told me 25. Oh, yeah, we're going to have to talk about that a little bit. And I'll show you guys what's going on. We in crime time. Yeah. There's a lot of interesting things happening. And various different people are involved in such things. But something's going on with our conservatives. Something's going on with our Spy Kids conservatives because they're living in the game world. They're not in our world. They're somewhere else. They're on the net. You remember those like 2000s like net concepts where they would like physically go into the net, and that was their way of doing a little commentary on cyberspace, is to make it an actual physical space where they would like go into the machines and everything would be green and they'd like transmit themselves. Or maybe it's just that one Fairly Odd Parents episode. Going to talk about the Tennessee election. I did a little bit yesterday, which is overperformance. And people are coping on both sides about it. But I think it's a great performance by Democrats. And I think it also shows there's this narrative going around that like, well, because she was more progressive, she didn't overperform by the same amount as other people, but I don't think that's the right takeaway. I think the right takeaway is she was overperforming by more, and they had to pull out all the stops, spend a shit ton of money, get Trump on the line, make it like a nationwide pressure campaign to show up. And even then, under those conditions, it wasn't like this, like the turnout was higher than most of the other special elections, relatively. So, and she still overperformed by so I think that's cope, the whole like, and to me, it's a little similar to the Mamdani cope, where there are obviously confounding factors here that we ought to consider, such as the fact that the Mamdani race, he's running against two Democrats. That's going to make it harder to compare the Virginia and New Jersey overperformance with Mamdani, who was underperforming relative to his polling average, though some polls had him significantly less than where he ended up. The polling average off by 2, 3, something like that, against him, right? Similarly here, people are like, some libs, and listen, I don't mean to use lib in a pejorative. I almost never do that. Use lib in a pejorative. Scratch that. I never do that. Here I'm just identifying like a group of libs, when you say it with a certain intonation, libs who are trying to make this, see, we could have won it if we had a more centrist candidate, which I don't think is the takeaway for a more left-wing Democrat overperforming by like 13, 14 points in a plus 22 Republican district. You shit lib. A progressive Dem to lose by 9 points in a deep red district is huge. You did great. Republicans, yeah, 100%. Let's just not say lib. You guys can be a little sensitive. I just won't say lib like that, okay? Nobody clip that I use lib in a pejorative. And then there's the cope. There's the cope that this is all about like APAC or something. That's a little bit of cope. That's the reason for the overperformance. Oh, look what happens when all of a sudden you decide to go, more progressive. That to me isn't what you draw from the results, or at least the data don't show that, or I haven't been convinced by that. And then there's a cope by the Republicans, which is Democrats are coping about. It's a double level of cope, right? It's a cope about cope. The Republicans are coping that Democrats are coping, because the Republicans understand, if you're a smart person, that this is a warning sign for Republicans. Pick up the phone. What the hell? What the hell? I thought we've already done this. All right, wait, hang on. Yo, what up? Every morning there's a halo hanging from the corner. Are you there?
Yeah, I am. Keep going. Keep going.
I'm echoing. It's disturbing. I don't want to hear myself sing.
Let me exit your shit. I was just trying to get your attention, so let me pull
Couldn't
this up.
understand how the word get out. Once again, as predicted, left my broken heart. There you
And you ripped it out. Bow, bow, bow.
There we go. This is good. This is the you want
stop me from believing.
I heard you were doing some very triggering thing. I'm talking to you now. We're done with that.
Yeah, I thought we were singing. I thought we were duetting.
One second.
What's up?
People need to see you. One second.
Yes. What? Now my wife showed up to hate on my singing. That was so rude.
Oh, tell her I said hi.
I will. Pisco says hi.
Oh.
Hi. All right. So it felt like in our previous conversation, and we don't have to have a long conversation, by the way. I just want to drop by because I mostly drew this because of our conversation. So I listed a series of criteria that I'm evaluating people on for potentially being president of the United States. And if you look at it,
oh my God. Sorry.
Yes.
Sorry, that was an instant reaction.
That's fine. Intelligence, cunning, neoconservatism, which you could just see turn into geopolitical intelligence, constitutional loyalty, social conservatism, fiscal conservatism, national conservatism, Burkean conservatism. And of course, we could come up with like more criteria and weight them differently. However, I went through like a series of characters and I evaluated them on a scale of 1 to 10. And I added up their total numbers on a scale of 80.
Oh, shit. So, all right.
Yeah. And so and this is kind of how, because it felt like in our previous conversation, because you were weighting them differently, I suppose. But also you thought that some categories should override other categories or whatever. We just like jumped from category to category, which I think is why the conversation was like all over the place. Whereas if you actually look at the evaluative criteria, pretty much everybody ranks in where approximately I think they would rank. So as an example, Obama is better than way better than Trump, way better than Harris, way better than Vance. But then in my evaluative criteria, Vance and Harris are competitive, but Harris is better. Weirdly enough, Newsom is better than Vance. But then I brought up how if Newsom panders to Mamdani and Hassan Piker, he could drop his scores. And I brought up how Vance could bring up his scores. Mm-hmm. And then I also did Hassan Piker, the Bush family, Teddy Roosevelt, Lincoln, Haley, who scored the highest in my opinion, autist Ron, Joe Biden. And so within this criteria
Wait,
stuff,
is Ron DeSantis?
Yeah.
Okay.
So within this like evaluative criteria, we could argue about like the scores that I gave people and why. Mm-hmm. But I think this is
what you're thinking about. These are the things you're thinking about.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It kind of makes clear the criteria through which I'm evaluating people and why I'm ranking them the way that I'm ranking them.
Okay. Okay, that's helping me understand. And before I tear into this a little bit, and that is always my nature, is to just like tear into stuff. And so don't take it personally. And we'll definitely get the weeds on some of this stuff because this is triggering me just looking at it a little bit. But just to make sure, before I start doing that, I'm trying to recognize myself. You're weighting all of these different attributes equally. So someone who is 0 on Constitution, that the points for Constitution are just as much weighted as the points for Burkean conservatism or intelligence, right?
For the sake of simplicity, yeah.
Okay. All right. And cunning represents, like, this is how I understand it. You tell me if it's right. As opposed to intelligence, it's kind of willingness to be ruthlessly cutthroat and pragmatic. Is that what you mean by cunning?
I would say like a combination of like charisma and political maneuvering.
Okay, charisma and political maneuvering. Okay, I buy that. And social meaning social policy.
I would say that this would be social conservatism. I kind of rooted it in like conservative philosophy. Weirdly enough, being higher on the social conservative ladder might actually be bad, because it's effectively like, how pro-gay and how pro-minority are you, I suppose. But then I tried to like weight it back, where effectively like
so a
woke
10 isn't
was
most
low.
conservative. A 10 is like the ideal social policy, right? So 10 is like the ideal social policy, which is like your vision of what is the correct thing to do, right?
Probably the balance. Yeah, I guess if I probably flubbed this category on an evaluative criteria, but if I was to try to like make it as strong as I possibly could, it would be the balance between being too progressive and being too conservative.
Got it. So in other words, I don't want people to get the wrong impression. Like intelligence on the intelligence score, more intelligence is better, and 10 is maximum, comparative intelligence, right? 10 being the maximum. And but that's not necessarily the case for things like neocon and social and fiscal, where I'm assuming by fiscal you don't mean it's like the ideal fiscal policy, and social is the ideal social policy, not just necessarily 10 equals the most possible social conservatism, right?
Because I was waking up and getting caffeinated, I probably mixed some of my categories in that regard. So I might have like graded people on how much they actually like executed that ideal versus like whether or not they maximally fulfilled the ideology, I suppose. So I might have mixed those, but I agree with you that it would be better if I picked one and stuck with it.
Unlike intelligence and cunning, which are like over your 10 is going to be like maximum cunning, right? And intelligence is maximum intelligence, whatever reasonable maximum is. I'm not even saying that it's like the biological limit or anything. All I'm just saying is those are ranked in terms of the greater the better, but some of these other scores aren't ranked greater the better. It's like closest proximity to ideal, right? And 10, what does it represent? The most conservative for social. It's 10 is the most ideal for social policy or something like that.
Yeah, let's roll with that. But truth be told, as an example, Teddy Roosevelt with social conservatism, I put him at a 10, which is probably not an evaluation of an ideal. That's actually probably an evaluation of the fact that compared to modern standards, he's an extreme social conservative.
Oh, so these are all relative. These are all relative to their times.
Yeah, so I probably fucked that up a little bit, where in some circumstances I was scaling them on ideal, and in some circumstances I was scaling them on adherence to ideology. So I could rework some of these numbers, but I still think just as like a conversation starter, this is it's at least it formalizes what we should be evaluating.
I get it. And we can definitely speak more in like the concept you're trying to convey to me as opposed to the specifics here, but just so people understand who are watching, I think that what that means is you wouldn't say Teddy Roosevelt has your ideal social policy, because Teddy Roosevelt, of course, was a raging racist, right? By our standards, by those standards, right? Relatively progressive and modern, but by our standards,
weirdly enough, I would probably maybe I would like bump him down to like a 7 or something like that, because he was a raging racist, but he was also like a civic nationalist. So he might be like, oh, the black skull shape is more prone to criminality, but if they love America, they can be great Americans, So it'd be pretty racist, but it would also be like incredibly civic nationalist.
Yeah, but wouldn't civic nationalism be subsumed under nation as opposed to social?
Maybe, but then I use that category for national conservatism because effectively I'm evaluating these people under conservative criteria. And weirdly enough, Trump and Vance are 100% maxed out on national conservatism, because
what does that
their
mean?
obsession.
I don't understand that.
Yeah, their obsession is maintaining American demographics. That's their obsession.
That's national conservatism, is maintaining American demographics. And
absolutely.
And you're giving benefit to Trump for that. So the fact that he wants to maintain current racial demographics and ethnic demographics, that is like a bonus. That he's considering that and trying to protect our racial and ethnic makeup?
Well, that's what I'm saying, where I would have to pick one and stick with it, where I would either have to say I'm grading these people on adherence to the ideology, or I'm grading them on ideal policy. And truth be told, because I was waking up and getting caffeinated, I think I flip-flopped between the two of them.
I just don't understand. Okay, I get that you were caffeinated, and I'm also very. This is very interesting and fun for me to look at this. So I'm not mad that you made this. I'm just perplexed. So are you suggesting now, or are you not suggesting that someone who is trying to maintain the racial and ethnic demographic numbers of America, they would get a 10? Like if they were to be incredibly focused on that, they would get benefited from it under this rubric, right? That would stand to reason that you want to maintain the ethnic and racial demographics of America right now, and that's an important point for you.
Weirdly, I would probably take, because this is something that we probably disagree on, or I think we do disagree on it. I would probably
answer the fucking question, Connor. Connor, I'm asking you. Do you get
waking up?
Okay.
Give me a second. Okay, so the reason why Biden, Piker, and a few other people got like zeros or close to zeros on national whatever is because, in my opinion, they don't give a fuck about the border, right? They don't give a fuck about demography. They want as many immigrants as possible, and I think that's cringe, right? So I think I'm a civic nationalist. I'm a paperwork nationalist. I think that we should have an extreme vetting criteria where you basically should piss red, white, and blue.
Which is race neutral and ethnicity neutral? Or not?
It's race neutral, but it's civically very selective.
Okay, then is it the case that, so then my question stands, which is, do people who are ideologically committed to preserving the racial and ethnic demographics of America, would they be benefited under this nation criteria?
I think they would, because if you compare it to open borders advocates, I would rate them at a 0. Whereas if you looked at Trump and Vance, let's say that because they weren't civic nationalists, I bumped them down to like a 7 or a 6 because they're kind of not fulfilling my ideal. They would still probably I'm sure Trump and Vance would still make exceptions. I mean, Vance is married to a fucking Indian woman. Trump fought his own base on H-1B visas. They would probably be more aligned with, if you're a different demographic, when you come here, you have to piss red, white, and blue.
Yeah, but
so they would probably get a benefit.
Well, I'm not saying
it might not be a maximal benefit.
I'm not saying that incidentally could people who as a mere correlation that would happen. I'm asking, is the criteria, does it benefit policies whose intent are to preserve ethnic and racial demographics? Because you seem to suggest that was what was the criteria was about, was like being very conscious of racial and ethnic lines, and that would sort of imply / entail that that's something that you view as preferable. If not, then why don't you just change that to like immigration or something, which is one of my commenters are saying. If that's
because I do put some weight there. So as an example, we brought
on race. Just to be clear, on race and ethnicity. Go.
Yeah. So ethnicity. I don't value that as a solitary category, because every time that you try to isolate ethnicity, it kind of doesn't work. What I use in difference is like ethno-religious, and then same thing with like racial. I don't think I give a fuck about racial, right? So, but I do care about ethno-religious, and so when it comes to national conservatism, I think that we could take probably a shitload of Muslims, maybe hundreds of thousands, maybe millions, but they would need to be American civic nationalist, and they would need to be moderate in their religion. And so therefore, this is a screening criteria that I care about. I do think that we should screen for, and I also would not want like a Muslim majority. Like if we're currently at 330 million people. Mm-hmm. If we had an opportunity to take another 200 million Muslims into the United States and we just had all of the infrastructure available to do it, I would say no. I would say that's a bad idea.
So to what extent do you agree with the following, Sam? And then we'll get back to the rubric. It is important to me to preserve the white character of America.
Like a 3 out of 10.
So you somewhat agree with aspects of that America, that there should be some consideration of preserving America as a white country.
We in my opinion, we should preserve it as like a plurality, a Northern European plurality.
Got it. Let's get into the rubric.
So if we're at 30% or 40%, but the other 30% or 40% is Hispanic, which is also a European colonial project, and then if another 10 to 15% is Black and another 10 to 15% is Asian, I think we can power broker these ethno-religious tribes, and hopefully eventually we evolve past the ethno-religious tribalism.
Right. There's a super chat that they paid me to read this to you. Pisco, here's $10 to tell Connor he made a very nice list, but we're going to stop pretending to care now. I don't agree with this. I actually do care, and I want to talk about it. On the
suck a dick, super chatter.
So you would actually, someone who is completely race neutral and ethnicity neutral in their policy, he's not going to be as good in the nation score as someone who is moderately interested in preserving aspects of the white character of America, correct? Someone who's totally race neutral will be worse off in your view.
You keep adding white, but yeah.
No, but you said, but you're buying. I'm putting it there. You can reject it or accept it. I'm putting it there and asking, do you accept it? And you're saying yes. So race
because I kind of accept it, because I think people presume when you put like you care about the white character of the United States of America or whatever, they presume that means that you're like hostile to ethno-religious tribes or other ethno-religious or racial tribes.
I don't think it implies but this it is. You are stating that there's something important about our policymakers trying to preserve an aspect of the whatever you want to call white America, white character of our nation, the ethnic heritage of our nation, however you want to term that is conscious of people's racial and ethnic makeups. Fair?
Add in religion, but yeah.
Sure, we can add religion in there as one of the components. So nation has to do with like the aspects of America that are non-legal, right? It's not looking at the Constitution. Fair? You have a whole different thing for that. It's looking at America not in view of patriotism either. It's just in view of the current people who live here or something.
Yeah, I would recommend, just to wrap your head around this, and I'll tell you, but maybe you should read the Wikipedia on it.
Yeah.
So national conservatism has kind of reared its ugly head. And a few months ago, I was arguing that there is no conservative philosophy that Donald Trump and his sycophants fall under. Mm-hmm. That's what I argued several months ago. But if you look at national conservatism, and if you check out the Wikipedia, it effectively says that they are a political bloc that is kind of obsessed with the current demographics of a nation state and think that like culture, sovereignty, religion, ethnic demographics, all that bullshit, they're kind of obsessed with maintaining and stabilizing that character. And as an example, they would cite the Polish politicians in Poland. They would cite Viktor Orban out of Hungary. And I think Donald Trump also meets this criteria.
Yeah, why would you benefit someone for having this philosophy unless you agree with it?
Because I think that there's extremes of anti-border, anti-sovereignty, anti-demographic analysis. There's extremes that need to be guarded against. And so as an example...
Trump does an ideal job at that? Trump is...
No.
Then why does he get a 10?
Because like I said, I was waking up. And so I probably mixed fulfilling my ideal of this policy versus fulfilling the ideal of the ideology. Donald Trump is a perfect national conservative. National conservatism is just not my ideal.
But if it's not, but you understand that if
I should change his score. Yes, I already said that.
Okay. All right. So,
I already said that, like, I should probably bump him down to a 5 or a 6 if we're working off of my ideal.
Okay. So national conservative is like your ideal amount of national conservatism. And that relates to questions of immigration. You mentioned sovereignty. But it just seems very counterintuitive to neoconservatism.
It is.
So then these are like kind of diametrically opposed.
I don't think they're diametrically opposed. Just because you advocate just because you advocate for liberal democracy or republicanism internationally through soft power and military strength doesn't mean that you're an open borders advocate.
Yeah, but
that
no.
doesn't
But neocons are not open borders advocates.
right.
Neocons
they're typically civic nationalists.
But neocons are like interventionists. They're universalists when it comes to rights. They are certainly less particular about preserving ethnic and whatever heritage. At least the professed ideology is more about spreading democracy, spreading liberalism. That is to say, economic liberalism, and the Bretton Woods type of shit. Like that's property rights.
Agree. I think that's why there's so much hostility between the tribes. So like the national conservatives view themselves as like the future of the right wing because the neoconservatives were in power effectively through the late Cold War into the early War on Terror. And they viewed them as like disastrous interventionists who did not care about the home front. And the neoconservatives have earned that reputation. They've earned that reputation. But that's why they hate each other so much, is because the national conservatives view the neoconservatives as hawks in the streets and doves in the sheets. Whereas, the national conservatives are like doves in the streets and hawks in the sheets. And so they're opposed. They're political rivals.
Okay, if they're political rivals, I just don't understand why you're like, I understand neocons to be against protectionism, to be, in favor of more legal immigration, in favor of trade deals between different countries, in favor of greater unification among Western countries and spreading democracy to other such places, and making sure that America has a strong presence on the world stage and is governing things across the world. That's what I'm more aligned with neoconservatism. And I view kind of this national conservative idea that you're introducing, or that you're talking about, not that you're introducing necessarily, but that you're talking about, as kind of in favor of protectionism, in favor of just focusing on American interests, in favor of breaking off the ties that the neoconservatives want to create. So it just seems like, well, I mean, look, for example, you have Lincoln, 10 neoconservative, and also 10 national conservative. And it just very much feels like those ideas have a lot of opposing principles.
Well, sure. But I mean, I also think that we're probably doing like a vibes-based philosophy rather than systematizing the underlying ideology. So for instance, like neoconservatism wasn't around when Lincoln was around, right? But
right. So how does he get a 10 on it?
Because he's geopolitically competent to the point, and he also used American interventionism in order to impose republicanism on arguably a foreign rebellious nation.
Wait, so fighting a rebellion is interventionism?
Stamping out rebellion and forcing them to be Republican.
Is interventionism?
Yeah, absolutely.
In the sense that is interventionism in the sense of like the international sense?
Well, I mean, obviously it's a domestic sense because he participated in the Civil War more than he did the thing. Maybe it's a meme answer. I don't know. But effectively, like, when you think of neoconservatives, you typically think of that, like Uncle Sam with an AR-15 going over to Afghanistan in order to shoot terrorists in the face. When I think of Lincoln, I think of Lincoln looking like Uncle Sam, grabbing a musket, walking down to Dixie and shooting slavers in the face. It feels very spiritually parallel.
Interesting. So you kind of view the war in Iraq as like an extension of the Civil War? The American Civil War?
I view the war in Iraq. So I think what the Civil War in the United States and what the war in Iraq share is a antipathy towards tyranny.
I see. Okay, let's get into the numbers then.
Okay.
Obama and intelligence is like raw IQ type thing.
Okay. He's just a smart guy.
Obama 10, Cunning 10. I think that Obama is far less cunning than you're giving him credit for. Like, he seems a little naive in his first term, especially.
Well, but I think that even you would admit that his charisma is a 10.
Oh yeah, I guess.
Combine political efficiency along with charisma for the cunning rating, and then also what I would say,
but he doesn't have a perfect score though because he fucked up on passing certain legislation. He wasn't able to get Merrick Garland through. He was kind of like a rule follower down to every single second of it.
But also, compare him. Don't compare him to the almighty. Compare him to the alternative, right? There's no president who's going to have like perfect execution of policy because there's obviously going to be obstructions in the way. The question is whether or not he's playing the game to his maximum ability. And I think Obama arguably played the game to his maximum ability.
To his personal maximum ability or some other standard? Yeah, I'm sure.
I think his personal maximum ability.
That's all it takes?
Dude, what do you want me to change it to? You want me to change it to an 8?
I would probably
why
give
don't
it
I
like
why don't I just send you a copy and you change it to your number?
Okay. All right. Well, keep going. So neocon 6 because he got out of Iraq, I guess, and so he gets.
Yeah.
You would want him to stay in Iraq.
All from Iraq is a little messy.
It's a little messy, so he gets a 6.
Yeah.
Okay. Constitutionally, why only a 7?
I would say that the ACA expansion, I have no idea where like universal access to healthcare is like constitutionally supported. I have like no idea how you can legally compel American citizens to consume a service. I have no idea how the fuck that's possible. I also think that he would like.
Have you read?
I think he would like transfer power once he was no longer elected. He respected the terms. He respected the balance of power. He consulted the judiciary. So that's why I gave him a 7.
Have you read Sibelius? That's the opinion which says why, because it's just a tax penalty. It's just like a sin tax, or like it would be like, by the way, states force you to get driver's license in order to drive. States force you to, be insured. To buy products sometimes, but this was just a tax. If you didn't have it, you had to pay a tax.
Yeah, sure. I just,
he lost 3 points of it.
If we're getting back to constitutional originalism, I just don't.
Okay.
I get it. Like we've built on this like tax structure over time. But I don't. Once again, like life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. I just don't understand how the state can compel you to consume a service. But that's okay. If you want to rate them different, rate them different. I don't give a shit.
Fuentes gets a 10 on Nation. You would bump that down.
He's obsessed.
Yeah, 2.
Obsessed
it's bad.
With preserving the demographics of the United States.
Yeah, that's bad. It's not good.
Yeah, so he should. If we're talking about my ideal, because I'm a civic nationalist, I should bump him back down to a 6.
Okay. He right now, in how you view it, you would prefer Fuentes to Trump.
I would.
Why?
I think Fuentes is actually like potentially infinitely more competent and intelligent than Trump.
Yeah, why is that a good thing if his aims are horrible, which they are?
Well, I mean, I've reflected that within the criteria. He's a 0 on neocon. He's a 0 on constitutional. He's a 0 on fiscal. He's a 0 on Burke.
Hassan Piker doesn't get a 0 on everything.
Yeah, he does. Guy's a fucking arsler.
He gets a 0 on everything.
You actually want me to run through Hassan Piker real quick?
Yeah, go for it.
His real intelligence is a 3.
Okay.
His real cunning is a 5. His real neocon is a 0.
Okay.
His real constitutional is a 0. His real social is a 0. His real fiscal is a 0. His real national is a 0. His real Burkean is a 0. So he gets an 8.
Okay. Teddy Roosevelt. Oh, wait, no. Nikki Haley is your top. Nikki Haley gets an 8 on intelligence. Someone should average the women to see how they do. I'm just kidding. There's only 2, right?
I think she's I think she's the only woman.
And Harris.
Oh, there's 2 women. Yeah.
Cunning 7, neocon 8, and you've given Lincoln more neocon than Nikki Haley. Interesting. And you have
that's because of her Israel sweeping. I think she's too Ziocon.
Are you getting Fuentes built? How much America First are you watching?
Enough.
How often do you find yourself laughing and agreeing with everything Nick is saying?
Rarely. 30% of the time. And I would say like it's descriptively he can describe a problem relatively astutely, his prescriptions always suck ass.
Interesting.
Like even if he's like, oh, we have an entire generation of lost boys who are smoking weed and hanging out in video games, and they're so socially stunted they can't even find girls, and the job market is terrible. Or even if you do get employed, you're underemployed, or you're not valued properly, or you're alienated from your job, or this, that, the other. Even when he's making descriptive claims, then his prescription is that's why you should become a Christian nationalist. And it's like, okay, all right, that's not going to help any of the things that you're complaining about.
Interesting. All right, so my big thing to talk about with this chart is I think that you should weigh certain things more than other things. I would rate like adherence to the Constitution way more important than fiscal responsibility. I would weigh like neocon. That is not an important factor in my decision. I don't want like it just seems like these would be more comprehensible if you had like foreign policy, domestic policy, I don't know, immigration, character. Instead, they're kind of, the categories are themselves like stances. Like neoconservatism is itself. It's not like a category of thing. It is an ideology. And so it's just a little hard for me to follow. But obviously, I think that someone who gets a 0 on Constitution, why would you ever vote for someone who gets a 0 on Constitution?
I mean, that's what you said to me. That's basically
and what is the
you
response?
said to me in the conversation.
Yeah, and what is the response?
The response is Vance is a political chameleon, and I have to see what the
but he has a 0 on Constitution. You can put him a 0.
I have to look at what the political ground looks like in 2028.
Yeah, but he has a 0 on Constitution.
That could change in the next 2 to 3 years.
Really? You think that he's going to be? You're saying he's a chameleon, that he'll do anything no matter what, but he might develop a loyalty to the Constitution?
Yeah. He might not have a.
Are you fucking with me?
Kind of. I'm kind of fucking with you.
Why? Why are you fucking with me?
Because at the end of the day, ideological purity or ideological adherence to these ideologies or these ideas. Let's say that we changed the category. Let's say that we changed neoconservatism to just foreign policy. Okay. Constitutional conservatism. Let's change it to just constitutional loyalty. Social conservatism. Let's just change it to social policy. Fiscal. Let's just change it to fiscal policy. National, let's change it to immigration, and then Burkean is going to be important to me, but it might not be important to anybody else.
I don't understand the Burkean as different from some of those, but
are they an incrementalist or are they a revolutionary? That's what that is.
And you think that JD Vance is an incrementalist?
JD Vance got a 2 out of 10 on that criteria, so he's actually more revolutionary than.
Oh, sorry, I didn't see that. I thought it was a 7.
So the point is with JD Vance, I did say that he's a political chameleon, and I think that you kind of mentioned this, that you think that there's kind of like he's like a black hole. He's like a pariah in the Warhammer 40K universe. He actually he has no form or substance. He's kind of like a demon, and I agree with that. But at the same time, these demons that we're evaluating, the devil you know versus the devil you don't. What we're realistically evaluating them for is how they're going to achieve and wield power. And I think that Vance, because his cunning is lower, because I put him at a 7, but realistically, he can be so off-putting, you might even bump him down to a 6. Because he's so personally off-putting, he does not command the cult of personality of Donald Trump. And so I think he's going to be he's going to have to broker power much more than Trump ever did. And so he might not be a constitutionalist at all, but he could rhetorically pay deference to the Constitution. But that would be because he's actually power brokering with actual constitutional conservatives in order to win their vote. So whereas if Newsom was like, yeah, fuck the Second Amendment, I'm going to ban every single gun in existence, then I'd be like, okay, actually, Newsom is scoring lower. So
this is kind of what it sounds like to me.
If you ask me probabilistically, sorry, this is actually important.
Yeah.
If you ask me probabilistically, Do I think Vance, in the vacuum caused by Donald Trump, that he's going to moderate to the extent that he's politically viable? Versus, do you think Newsom is going to become so progressive and woke in the next 4 years that he's going to be politically unviable? If I was a betting man, I actually think that Vance is not going to moderate enough, and Newsom is probably going to moderate enough to vote. So, and that's reflected in the current scores, by the way. Newsom I have at 52, Vance I have down at 41.
Got it, but there's a margin here that needs to be considered. Can I say what it sounds like to me? And this isn't a perfect comparison. It sounds like you're saying this is the kind of way it's perceived by me. Not that I think that the administration is specifically the people I'm referencing. Just keep that in mind. I'm not saying that they're literally like this, but this is like the kind of feeling I get. It would be someone's like, well, Heinrich Himmler is going to be a lot more of a party official. He's going to be a lot more reasonable than Goebbels, and so given between Goebbels and Himmler, like obviously Himmler has more cunning. He might actually be hemmed in a way that Goering isn't. Goering is this national hero, and he's going to have more ability to move around the party and do bad things. It's just like, and when the option is those people or I don't know, John Adams or something, like the comparison, or even just like Barack Obama, it's like you're considering all of these different like extraneous things, and like, hang on, the problem is these are reptiles who get 0 for Constitution, right? Like, that's the problem, right? Like, the problem is this guy's head is missing, but you're talking about how he has a bruise on his arm and how he could stand to lose a few pounds. But wait a second, Connor, he's missing his head. This patient this is a cadaver. It's not even a person. It's missing its head. We need to find the head. And you're like, oh well, I mean, I guess we could like give him an Advil or something. That's what it feels like to me. It's like,
but this is where I think that you guys aren't going to get what you want. Okay, so I think we could probably agree on this historically, if you'll indulge me a second. Reconstruction in the post-American Civil War should have continued, right? And the sons of the Confederacy probably should have been barred from political office, but because they were a third to a half of the country, they weren't. And so as a matter of political practicality, they allowed the Confederates to return into political power, and then they incrementalized the social reforms necessary to achieve a greater nation, a greater union. That's what happened descriptively throughout or even in the American Civil War. This is less extreme than the American Civil War. And so you're not going to get a Nuremberg trial. You're not going to get a
that's not what I'm saying.
Are banned.
Oh, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that that's what I want to happen. What I'm saying
is
the compare. Yeah, that's. I don't think that the proposal as stated is correct.
Morally, maybe you should.
Well,
but you're not going to.
I don't know. I don't know what's meant by that term, the Nuremberg style thing. I think there's some confusion.
Like almost like imagine a truth and reconciliation, kind of like South Africa had after apartheid. A Truth and Reconciliation Council where some of the most grievous actors are either incarcerated or killed by the state.
Well, I don't believe in capital punishment, but I would support an aspect, like versions of that, just not in its most the way he said it, where we charge everyone with insurrection even if they don't commit insurrection. You were right about that point,
right? And so my beef with what's going on right now, and I think you could probably, I feel like I've been vindicated by time multiple times with my takes that a lot of people haven't liked. I don't think you're going to get that. I don't think you're getting Truth and Reconciliation. I don't think you're getting the MAGA people to disavow Trump. I think that they're going to try to. I'm not saying
that the only reason I brought up Goebbels, Goering, these people is to give you a sense of like how I'm reacting. Like when you say, well, JD Vance, he like he's more cunning and he'll be like better than Trump because of this. I'm like, they're both reprehensible people who have zeros on Constitution, and the number one thing a president is supposed to do is swear to preserve and protect the Constitution of the United States. That's the number one thing, and you've given them zeros. So I'm not saying that I expect there to be a Truth and Reconciliation or charges. The reason I was bringing that up was to show you how bizarre it is to hear you talk about these, what I consider much more minor, less important points. It would be like discovering that JD Vance and Donald Trump were literal lobster people, right? If you found that out and someone were to tell you, yeah, Vance, he's got really good economic policy, and you just be like, well, wait a second, why are you talking about that? He's a lobster. And like everyone would look at you weird for saying like, oh yeah, well, I'm considering also the fact that he's a Burkean conservative at a 2 instead of a 0. And you're like, but hang on, he's a lobster person. We can't vote for that.
Sure. Yeah. Yes. And I not only hear you, but I recognize that in a moral universe, like a more just universe, this should just be disqualifying. I should be able to just say, because he said that he would enable Donald Trump in the false elector scheme, and because he's become such a Trump brown noser, and because he's enabled a disastrous agenda that has probably cost the international economy trillions of dollars and killed hundreds of thousands of people unnecessarily, he should just be instantaneously disqualified. I understand that. However, what I'm saying is that I have moved into, probably in the past 5 years, 10 years, into the lesser of two evil calculi. Like that's just the way that I'm
buying that. Wait, no. I'm not saying that. I don't take this view like fucking Prime Kai, where you don't do harm reduction when it comes to voting. I'm just asking, like, what even conceivable that Gavin Newsom, who, by the way, you said Mark Kelly, easy question. I would take Mark Kelly over. I
should probably throw Mark Kelly on my spreadsheet.
You should.
Mark Kelly
should. But like, let's stick with Gavin, who you're less sure about. What does Gavin have that even compares to the fact that JD is a lobster person, that would be like, it's plausible that Gavin Newsom, like, I understand if it turns out that Gavin Newsom actually is the reincarnation of Mao or something, or of okay, I'll hear you out. If there's actually evidence, like there is things that could logically exist in the universe that would cause you to be like, but that's true of everyone. That's true of Trump. By the way, one such person I think is Fuentes. I think that Trump is preferable to Fuentes, and I'm just being honest with you right there.
Yeah, but are you saying that he's preferable to Fuentes because he's incompetent?
Because he's I think that because
he would execute less of his nefarious agenda.
I think that the corruption, in some ways, it is really, really bad by itself and horrible, right? But it also oddly sometimes has the quality of preventing certain ideological excesses that I think Fuentes would be prone to in a way that I think is very dangerous.
No, I actually, this was just a stab. This was a stab in the dark. Like, this whole spreadsheet is a stab in the dark. But the reason why it was a stab in the dark is because I think anybody who listened to our conversation, I don't know if it was yesterday or the day before, but anybody who listened to that conversation was probably pretty unsatisfied. And the reason why they were unsatisfied is actually because of what you said, which is like schizophrenic Goldilocks. Like, you have like 20 criteria, but we can't nail down exactly where they are. And you just are saying like, this one's too hot, this one's too cold, this one's too hot, this one's too cold, this one's too hot, this one's too cold. But it doesn't seem to be systematized in a way that you can actually perceive things. And I think that's kind of what happens when you're kind of like vibes based. But what I'm trying to do is rather than just pull, no offense, PF Young, but pull a PF Young and be like, well, this is just how I feel, like that's, I'm not going to do that. I'm trying to stab at systematizing it. Yeah. And so the system is flawed.
But I appreciate your efforts that you're doing this and that you're trying to,
but you're just saying that there's probably better ways to do the system, and there should be DQs. There should be disqualifiers.
I don't even think that's necessarily disqualification. I just think that they should be weighed differently. That's first and foremost.
Sure.
And second, I just fundamentally, I think that any kind of way, any principled basis of your stated values that finds a way to put a quantitative shell around what you're talking about will, if it's rational, obviously conclude that voting for Newsom is preferable than JD Vance on current information. In the same way, if it were Trump, like that,
right? But
I don't even think it's close.
I'll tell you what I'm doing. Yeah. I'll tell you what I'm doing consciously, subconsciously. I don't know. I am uncomfortable, like deeply uncomfortable with the way that the left is currently conducting itself. And that doesn't mean that the right isn't worse. The right, ask me, I'll say MAGA worse, MAGA worse, MAGA worse. Hold on, let me finish the idea. Okay. Let me finish the idea. So I'm deeply uncomfortable with the way that Mamdani has been sanitized. I'm deeply uncomfortable with the way that Hassan Piker has been sanitized. I'm deeply uncomfortable with the way that liberals and capitalist progressives have just said, oh, they're just sock dems. They're just like cute. They're just uwu. They're just kawaii. Don't worry about it. And so what I'm doing is I'm reserving judgment until I take my fraction of political power and cast it in a vote. And I'm saying, I am worried about these things that you are doing. I can't compel you to shift my way politically and view the world the way that I do it. But I'm just telling you, I'm not signing up for your team. So if you want me to sign up for your team, Gavin Newsom better stay a fucking moderate. Gavin Newsom better not become the reincarnation of Mao Zedong. He better not do a podcast with Hassan Piker. And if he does a podcast with Hassan Piker, he better give him
Who
flack.
cares?
Like, better give it,
Who cares? Would you say it's disqualified to have a podcast with Fuentes?
Would you care? Would you
JD
care?
Vance,
If
JD Vance has podcasts
Donald
with some of the
Trump-
worst people. What the fuck?
Well, that's what I was going to say. Do you think that's a viable access of criticism?
A viable
I do.
access of criticism? To
If JD
interact
Vance-
with people who are
if JD
controversial?
If JD Vance does a podcast with Nick Fuentes or Richard Spencer or name a far right guy,
If he doesn't
preacher-
challenge them, if he just gives them a hand job, but not the interaction
that's what
itself.
I'm saying.
No, but
That's what I'm saying. I'm saying that on the left.
But JD,
So you understand it on the right. Why don't you understand it on the left?
No, I understand it. But JD, the difference is JD is giving hand jobs to horrible people all the time, and it's not.
And I'm saying if Gavin Newsom wants my vote, he better not give hand jobs to horrible people.
Well, first of all, JD is a horrible person. So just put that down in your book right away. Like JD is a despicable human being himself. I think that JD Vance. I'm going to say something controversial, and I'm going to make you agree. JD Vance is a worse person than Hassan Piker. Yes or no?
No.
That is I don't understand how you even begin to draw that conclusion.
You just read the history of socialism and communism in the
Okay.
20th century. It's actually that simple. All you have to do is you have to understand that the decommodification of basic human needs, workers owning the main means of production, and also the emancipation of the working class has been used as a historical pretext, like emancipating the working class from the horrors of capitalism has been used as a political cudgel by the worst people in human history in order to commit crimes that are on par with Adolf Hitler. That's all you have to understand. And if you don't understand that, just pick up a fucking history book. It's actually like not hard. So if you sanitize, in my opinion, authoritarian communism, Stalinist Russia, Maoist China, Pol Potian Khmer Cambodia, and to some extent, some of the crimes that the Vietnamese committed under Ho Chi Minh. If you evaluate those crimes that they committed some of the most like insane crimes in all of human history. And so if you try to sanitize that, normalize that, reintroduce it back into public conversation, I think you're the biggest fucking piece of shit in modern politics. Let alone
even debate it and talk about it.
Let alone sanitizing terrorism.
To even debate it and talk about it.
What do you mean debate or talk about? I'm happy to debate or talk about it. What are you talking about?
So you're like, if Gavin Newsom has Hassan on to talk about democratic politics and like the election that's coming, let's say that he's the nominee, you would say, oh wow, now I have to vote for JD Vance because you talked to Hassan on this podcast.
No, it would depend on the content of the conversation. If he was like,
what if it was
hey,
just like, oh yeah,
if you got a lot of young people in your audience, that's why I'm here. I want to talk to you, but I disagree with you on this, and this, and I'm actually going to push you on it.
No, he's like he's political, but he's like, we're not going to agree on everything, and we're going to have our disagreements, but it's really important if you care about progressive values, if you care about social liberalism, if you care about trans people, if you care about, you know how he talks, like Gavin Newsom, he's like, that you come out there and vote. It's a really important election, and thank you, Hassan, for having me on your show. He says, I appreciate it. I know that you guys
we're gonna
Twitch
have
thing.
to.
What would you say?
We're gonna have to argue about it at the time, but I'm just telling you.
Would you be like, shit, I'm gonna vote for JD now? I'm not
saying I'm going to vote for JD. It depends on what JD's doing.
But, I know, but like the thing that you're citing, you're like, I'm so worried. No, listen, this is how crazy it is. You're like, I'm so worried about how the left is acting right now. And I'm like, okay, what are you worried about? It's like, well, Gavin Newsom might have a podcast with JD. Like the dude had a podcast with Charlie Kirk.
It's okay. I've already said in this conversation, which is kind of frustrating, is that the right wing so hold on, let me describe this maybe to make it a little bit better. The lunatics that were fringe in the right wing took over the party. They are now 2/3 of the party. And what you're saying is, well, ignore the left when the left is flirting with the fringes and don't worry about whether or not the fringes take over the party. And I'm trying to wake you the fuck up. I'm grabbing you by the shoulders and I'm shaking you. Okay. You know me. All right. I'm not a perfect person. I am kind of irrational with some things. I am a little bit crazy. I do like to spurg out on Twitch and YouTube politics, but I think overall you think that I'm probably a decent human being who's trying to figure out the world as best I can. And I'm not a liar. Okay. I'm not lying about the way that I perceive
I don't think
things.
you're lying. I'm not accusing you of lying.
I'm trying to grab you by the shoulders and wake you the fuck up and say, this is serious and it will impact the future of American politics if socialism and communism becomes normalized on the left. There will be people who vote against you. Maybe I will just abstain from the top of the ticket. But I'm saying if you continue down this path of normalizing socialism and communism and do an apologia for the authoritarian regimes of the 20th century, I'm not a part of the team. I'm not a part of the coalition. I won't be a part of it. And I'll throw fucking rocks at you. Like that, it just is what it is. I am fundamentally opposed to fascism, political corporatism, and flexible authoritarianism as a political philosophy because I think it's terrible. I am fundamentally opposed to socialism and communism because the material conditions don't exist in which socialism can exist, which means necessarily you will have to institute an authoritarian government in order to impose these things, which is going to repeat the horrors of the 20th century. I'm not interested in this political project, and any sane person shouldn't be interested in that political project either, nor would they be cozying up to the people who are interested in that project.
If I granted this, it would only be in the context in which you were proposing, I think, to vote for one of those such people, these Marxist-Leninist, tanky socialist people. But in an election with Newsom, what you're saying is, because J.D. Vance is that guy. He is the guy who is a danger, and he is the representation of a kind of awful form of authoritarian politics, backed by some of the worst, most craven and disgusting interests that have ever existed on planet Earth. But you're saying not if it's between him and a communist. It's between him and Gavin Newsom if he like talks to a communist nicely.
It depends on the math. It depends on how we weight the math. I'm reserving the right to do the math.
I think that you're letting your vibes and optics. You want to be. This is what I think, and you tell me if I'm wrong. I don't think you're lying. I think you deluded yourself a little bit, and I think that you're trying to justify ultimately your identity as the last sane Republican and the maximal hater of Hassan and communism. But it doesn't really make sense.
Sure. It makes sense in a descriptive sense. I don't think I'm self-aware enough to know whether or not that's true. I'm just fighting for what I think is true. I would say that if I was bringing up a criticism of you, I think that because you are friends with leftists, you run a podcast with a leftist, you are dating. Are you still with Joe?
Yeah.
Isn't Joe a socialist?
Why does this matter? I don't think she'd identify
because
that way.
I think you have a blind spot because you believe these people are good people. You think they're well-intended. And they're a part of your coalition because they'll vote the right way. But I think you have a blind spot for them because you don't view socialism as bad as you don't view socialism as bad as fascism. So you're willing to tolerate good people in your life and in your professional sphere. And if anybody says, hey, I view fascism and socialism as like ideologies that are effectively two sides of the same coin, you can be dismissive of it because you know good people and the good people are going to vote with you. And arguably, they're a larger part of the neoconservatives and the center-right liberals who are going to like come your way might be statistically less than the socialists and communists who will vote the right way. And so effectively, as a progressive liberal, you have to make a choice because you probably can't have both. You probably can't have a coalition of socialists and communists and liberals and progressives and get the neocons.
I think people just mean different things by socialism than what you think they mean. I'm not saying that.
Well, I mean, I think
necessarily-
90% of people who say they're socialist are actually social democrats. They don't know what
so
socialism
if
is.
that's your view, that socialism means this particular virulent, horrible thing, and anyone who doesn't mean that when they say socialism are like wrong, why don't you just use like what they consider themselves to be? It sounds like you're getting triggered
Because I think they're useful idiots. I think they're useful idiots. I think when Bernie Sanders and AOC and Mamdani and Hassan Piker, when they use socialism in order to describe social democracy, and they say, "Oh, we just want the Scandinavian system," I don't view that as their end goal. I view that as them being politically pragmatic in the political scene.
Yeah, but
they do want people to read Marx. They do want people to read Engels. They do want people.
Do you think Bernie Sanders wants Stalinist?
Emancipate the working class from the oppressions of capitalism.
Do you think Bernie Sanders is a tanky?
Yeah.
Yes, you said?
Yeah. I think he hides his power level. I think if he could, he would. He just can't.
What is the basis to believe that?
Him doing apologia for Nicolas Maduro's regime, or sorry, somebody corrected me in your chat the previous time. Who was the guy before Maduro?
Was it Hugo Chavez?
Chavez. So him doing apologia for the Chavez regime, him honeymooning or traveling to the Soviet Union and doing apologia in the 60s and 70s, him being boys with Cuba. Yeah, I think he's a socialist
Trump
apologist.
And Vance do that with like China.
He doesn't want to get murdered.
They do. You want to talk about Hassan doing apologia for China, and I don't agree with apologia for China. I think that's stupid and wrong.
Yeah, that was wild, by the way.
Trump and the Republicans do it all the time.
Trump and Republicans are fucking pieces of shit. I'm arguing for them to be less pieces of shit.
I know, but then they're on all fours when it comes to apologia for despotic regimes, including, by the way, Islamic fundamentalist regimes where it's monarchies and there's no rights. So, like, you can do this little thing, but you voted for people and you will vote for people who do apologia for fucked up regimes. And the fact that that's your...
How much oil do they have?
So you're going to support this Venezuela, this attack? You're going to support Trump in this?
No.
Why? Presumably because you value the Constitution more.
Yeah.
And yeah.
I think that but hold on though. Let's say that they actually prove the case that they say they have, which in my opinion they haven't. But let's like time travel to universe 4096. Let's say that in order to fuck with the United States of America, and because they're anti-imperialist, anti-American imperialism, we actually did have evidence that Russia was flooding Venezuela with guns, which they were sending up, into Central America in order to destabilize Central America. And they were flooding Venezuela with drugs that they were then going to intentionally traffic into the United States to kill hundreds of thousands of Americans. And we have this like diagram of these like nefarious authoritarian actors who were trying to destabilize the United States. Then I wouldn't care about going to war with Venezuela on principle if it was voted for by Congress. But I think the case, number one, it hasn't been voted for by Congress. Number two, I think the case is probably exaggerated in the extreme. Like whatever connections between Russia and Venezuela, China and Venezuela, cocaine cartels in Venezuela, the drug trafficking network, the human trafficking networks, I think that these are exaggerated in the extreme because they know that blowing up fucking brown people who are dealing drugs plays well with their base.
Yeah, so it sounds like you're like a procedure and rule of law cuck, which I think is a good thing. I love that. And
yeah, it's called republicanism.
Yeah, then if that's so you can like another thing, right? Like if there was some policy that you really, really wanted, but you knew it would violate one's oath to achieve it in the way that it was being proposed, I think you would also be against it on principle that, listen, if we stop like paying homage and having allegiance to the Constitution, then we can just throw everything else that's good out the window. Because at this point, we're just like, what even are we at that point if we're just abandoning the Constitution?
It depends on the moral horror, right, of like this institution. So as an example, people have argued that the United States, the Union of the United States, was originally formalized as a confederation, that effectively every state was sovereign, and that the supremacy of the federal government was arguable, and that Lincoln is effectively a war criminal because he didn't respect the sovereignty of the southern states. And when they seceded, which was allegedly, at least according to this line of argumentation, was their right to do, he said,
and the MAGA
"Fuck
people think
you."
that they stole the election and therefore they have the right to do whatever they do.
Well, sure, but the point is that, like, even if let's grant the argument that the states were allowed to secede, I would still view Lincoln creating a centralized army, marching into the southern United States, keeping the Union whole, and ultimately abolishing slavery. I would view the procedural violations as ultimately justified by the moral horror that was abolished through the violation.
You're basically suggesting
so there is moral horror.
Yes, but like here's the thing, right? To the extent that there were infringements by Lincoln in terms of contradicting the Constitution, and I think that there's a potentially good case on habeas, no doubt about it. There was no question.
Uniformed armed enemy combatants. Why would they have a right to a jury trial? Should Union soldiers have detained soldiers?
But that's not what the problem was. The problem was he was like arresting journalists in Maryland and Maryland government officials, and so it wasn't like prisoners of war.
It wasn't just open rebellion. Okay.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
It was people who were in Union-controlled territories as well who were saying so. Now, I think that there's potential arguments that he has, and I forget them. I should redo it. But in other words, absolutely, that's a bad moment. Here's what we're not concerned about with Lincoln, though. That ultimately, what was his fixture aim? To preserve the Constitution and the Union. And so, yeah, those problems where he suspended habeas, which I would not have done, and remember, yes, dire fucking times. And I think that there's an implied right to suspend habeas for the president for like in moments of absolute imminent critical, and Congress has not had a moment to like even consider the issue, like, or let's say Congress is killed in like a strike. I think that there is some potential there. I'm not even the extremist who says, you know, the president can never in no circumstances do like there. I think sometimes overlapping considerations, and what Lincoln said, like in order to preserve the Constitution, he needed to do certain things, and some of them he wasn't sure if they were legal. That much is true. But no one questioned Lincoln's devotion to preserving the Constitution. That is what in the long run, right? The structure of the country. That's ultimately what he wanted to preserve. Did he violate habeas corpus? One Supreme Court judge writing circuit said he did. I'm not sure that legal case. I don't have strong views on that, and I've been thinking about that argument before. But we don't have the J.D. Vance situation. The J.D. Vance situation is not that. It's someone who wants to pervert our entire structure. You know, Lincoln had an election in the middle of the Civil War, which he was committed to following and doing freely and fairly. If he was actually melancholy because he thought he was going to lose that election for the longest time until the massive wins that happened by the Union generals. Which at least in the minds of a lot of people changed the tide, or at least got a positive sentiment for the Union and for Lincoln. This is very, very different from people like J.D. Vance and Trump, who wanted to get rid of elections and fundamentally change the structure of the Constitution in a way to make it more authoritarian permanently, as opposed to Lincoln, who was doing it in an exigency, a real exigency. So that's my response to that. And you should consider that.
Oh, and it's fine. I probably agree with the argument that loyalty to the Constitution should probably be weighted differently. Like if we had, I put up 8 criteria on which to evaluate people, and we even found flaws in the way in which we describe them to make them more like objective or universal, where a Democrat could fill this out. And then I think we also identified a flaw with the way that I rated it, where I was rating like adherence to the ideology versus adherence to my ideal. So we found 2 flaws relatively quickly. I'll clean this up today, by the way. I got a sledgehammer. Okay. So we identified like 2 flaws within like the evaluative criteria already. And then I also think that your weight argument is well grounded, because if JD Vance, let's say that he was like perfect. He had like geopolitically perfect takes. He had perfect social takes. He had perfect demographic
but zero
takes,
allegiance to the Constitution.
with zero allegiance to the Constitution.
Right.
And he effectively said, I'm only 45. I'm going to be benevolent dictator for the next 50 years. Or like he said, oh, I'm not going to be benevolent dictator for the next 40 years. But it seemed like everybody around him was.
That's basically your argument. That's basically your argument against Hassan. Just so you know, like, right? What is the fundamental problem in your mind with Marxist-Leninist dictatorship? Explain it.
Oh yeah, it's that there's no feedback from the people once the vanguards are in power.
Boom. So like,
Sure.
So when you take one step to be like, this is why I'm fearful of Marxist-Leninist dictatorship, is because what happens is there's no feedback mechanism, there's no accountability for the government,
what's your argument
there's no
for
rights.
Mamdani?
Because he is not a Marxist-Leninist, and he is not committed to the destruction. Because the only argument you have for that is he's hiding his power level. He is a democratic socialist.
Okay, hold on. But when people say, okay, hold on, I should be more clear, and I'll just answer the question instead of asking you it.
Mm-hmm.
The argument from people who say, oh yeah, he identified as a communist or a socialist 5 years ago. Oh yeah, he quoted the Communist Manifesto 5 years ago. Oh yeah, he was a defund the police guy 5 years ago. But realistically, all of his policy proposals are social democrat. And on top of them being social democrat, he's going to have a hard time in governance where the limits of his office are going to prevent him from being a Marxist-Leninist. So your fears
he endorsed Hakeem Jeffries.
I'm not going to.
Okay.
But I could make the inverted argument for JD Vance, where I could say, oh, the guardrails will hold. Don't worry about it. The guardrails will hold. Even if they want to make him a benevolent dictator for the next 50 years.
Here's the difference.
Guardrails will hold.
Here's the difference.
But
you do not have evidence. You do not have evidence that Mamdani would subvert the democratic process and the structure of the Constitution. What you have is him quoting people, and he called himself a socialist. Has he called himself a communist? I didn't see that. He quoted Eugene Debs.
He just quoted the manifesto a couple of times.
Okay, so he quoted Eugene.
Anything definitive.
All right, but that doesn't show that he is not committed to the Constitution of the United States. That showing has not been had. We've had that showing with J.D. Vance, both in his statements and also his time as vice president, where he is part of this administration and every step of the way co-signing the subversion of the Constitution. So there's ample evidence that J.D. Vance, including his backers, who you acknowledge say they're in a post-constitutional moment. Democracy is dying, it's weak. Yarvin, everything that you said there. So all the evidence that we have is super, super strong that J.D. Vance is not committed to the rule of law or the Constitution. And the reason why Marxist-Leninism is bad is largely because of the things that are consistent about people who are not committed to the rule of law. That there's no feedback mechanism. There's all the things that we just talked about. And so if that's the case, and if the evidence of Mamdani not being committed to the Constitution is essentially just your vibes, in what sense could you say, oh yeah, I would vote for Vance over Mamdani, which I think is your position?
Sorry.
It is your position, isn't it? You would vote for Vance over Mamdani. If I know that Mamdani can't be president, but assume he could. And the reason for that is Mamdani, you think, is hiding his power level, and he really is a Marxist-Leninist and committed to a communism dictatorship, correct?
Yeah.
But
eventually.
But that is bad, right? Communist dictatorship is bad because communist dictators are not hemmed in by the law, and that they impose authoritarianism, and they get rid of political dissidents, and there's no rights, right? That's why it's bad, right? That's why it's bad. There's no rights. There's no right. But J.D. Vance.
Okay, hold on. Let me explain. Let me explain because here's the things that let me try to explain it within a practical scenario rather than an ideological scenario. Because within the ideological scenario, I think I understand what you're saying, and not only do I understand it, I agree with it.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm saying is that there are things that you can't undo when it comes to economics and the welfare state. And just as an example, what was FDR? FDR arguably instantiated the welfare state in order to save capitalism, because there was a revolutionary sentiment in the United States of America that was either leaning towards communism or leading towards fascism. And so it's arguable that the modern American welfare state is actually what saved capitalism. Okay. But that is a balance. It's a balance between the market, free enterprise, regulation, deregulation, unions, and all that kind of stuff. It's a delicate ecosystem. And what I don't like about socialists and communists is I feel like they want political power in order to yank the ecosystem fully in one direction, and it's been historically disastrous. When it comes to fascistic people or fascistic regimes, they have maintained, arguably, some of the organs of government that were necessary in order to propagate society. Like if you look at Franco, if you look at Mussolini, if you look at all that kind of stuff, oftentimes they would like preserve the church, or they would preserve the free market, or they would preserve this, or they would preserve that. Because our Constitution is so robust, and because it's such a part of our right-wing culture to pay deference to the Constitution, that even if Vance said like, oh, I'm a post-liberal, and I would have helped out with the fake elector scheme, I almost guarantee you he has like some 3,000 IQ argument about how it was actually legal and how ultimately he would let the courts decide it. I'm sure he does. And also, like I said, he doesn't have the cult of personality of Donald Trump where he would be able to totally subvert the country. So
but
from
Hassan would. But Hassan would.
But
Hassan would. But Hassan would.
I mean, no offense. I think Americans voted in Donald Trump.
Answer
twice.
the question. Would Hassan be able to get a cult of personality and capture the minds of the American people such that he could have, because everything you're saying about the guardrails, okay, so then Hassan is not a danger.
Hassan's not a danger because he's a podcaster. That's why he's not a danger. But if there was like a Trump version of Hassan, we'd be fucked. We'd be totally fucked.
I don't think the American people have an appetite for a communist dictatorship.
Well, that's why socialists and communists hide their power level.
But you don't have evidence that Mamdani's hiding his power level. He wears it on his sleeve.
I mean, I could just bring up I don't want to loop, but I mean, I could just bring up all of his tweets from 2019 to 2022, and I could bring up some of his quotes from his speeches where, like, as an example, one of the quotes that rubbed me wrong like a motherfucker that absolutely sounded like hiding your power level was, I want to convince the American people that there is no problem too great for government to handle, and there is no problem too small for the government to care about. That sounds like a fucking dog whistle, power hiding level motherfucking socialist statement if I've ever heard one. So yeah, I think this dude's smart. I think he's probably ideologically committed. I think he's politically pragmatic. I think he's intelligent. And so that's where
but here's the deal. It's not just Mamdani, though. It's not just Mamdani.
What's that?
The thing is, it's not just Mamdani. It's Gavin
You're
Newsom.
right.
It's Gavin Newsom.
It's
Gavin fucking Newsom, governor of California.
You will acknowledge that Trump, because of who Trump was, although he was dismissed as a blowhard, idiot, populist, dipshit, completely politically unpalatable 10 years ago, he completely shifted the Overton window of the right wing over the past decade. And so what I'm saying is, you guys are ignoring the fact, and this pisses me off, that Mamdani and AOC, Bernie Sanders, and Hassan Piker, they do have the political capacity, or they might not have it right now, but it's entirely possible that they could shift the Overton window of American thought within the next decade.
That's been happening in America
I'm opposed to it.
Okay, that's been happening over the course of the last century. But America still, relatively speaking, look across the pond, we are a relatively conservative society.
And why wouldn't I, if I identify as a conservative, why wouldn't I fight to conserve the things I care about?
Yeah, well, it depends what those things are, and you're not getting that with JD Vance.
Sure.
Gavin Newsom would be committed to conserving the Constitution of the United States in a way that Vance would not be. That's a very important thing to conserve.
And based off of, but here's the thing. I'm not in the conversation. I think this is what's frustrating me about our conversation, is that I'm not reserving the right to vote for JD Vance no matter how horrible he is. That's not what I'm doing. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to tell you that there's like 10 different or 20 different, probably 50 different categories on which we evaluate who we want to be president of the United States. And there's material circumstances on the ground. And I'm reserving the right, because you're presuming it's Gavin Newsom. We don't even know if Gavin Newsom is going to be the primary.
Sure.
We don't even know if he's going to win.
The next on polymarket type stuff, it's like AOC. But
Sure.
I'm concerned if it's AOC, you're going to be like, nope.
I might abstain from voting. It depends. So that's the thing. I'm not reserving the right to unilaterally vote for JD Vance and cope my way to the voting booth that is opposed to my current stated principles. What I'm saying is I'm reserving the right to evaluate the political ground in 2028 and do this math. And here's the thing. We identified several flaws with the math that I did, but I think you'll acknowledge that based off of the math that I already did, Gavin Newsom scores he scores 20% higher than JD Vance based off of the current math.
Yes, in this deeply flawed chart that you made on MS Paint.
Sure. In this currently deeply flawed chart that we can evolve over the next like couple of years or whatever. And maybe we could just change if I weighted the constitutional section higher, Gavin Newsom would pull further ahead.
Yeah, so
based off of the current math,
I think Gavin
Newsom is a better candidate than JD Vance. I am stating that, but I am stating my right to evaluate the math in a year and a half.
That was never in question. That's true of Trump as well. That's
I know, but you're fucking annoying about it.
No, because you don't want to. Because the thing is, you're treating Vance different than
Trump.
Want
me to DQ him.
No,
you want me to DQ him.
I want you to treat. No,
listen. That's what you want me to do.
I'm always going to be about harm reduction, and we can have the individual conversations. I want you to treat Trump. I don't want you to think the problem of your party is limited to Trump, and that's this feeling I'm getting from a bunch of Republicans is they think it goes to Trump, but not much further. No, the rot is deep and wide. And the Republican Party is complicit, and JD Vance is one of the most complicit people, okay? And what I want you to do is not say, commit you right now, under no circumstances, even if there were a nuclear bomb, and the only way to get rid of the nuclear bomb is to vote for Trump. I want you, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying treat them the same way, and if you're going to do a chart, Newsom should be like, I don't know, a 70, and JD Vance should be like a 2. That's what the chart should read. It shouldn't be they're within, it's not even close. Whatever your current math is, that has him within a strike's distance of catching up to generic Democrat Gavin Newsom, governor of California, who has relationships with businesses, who's not a fucking secret tanky. I don't know where you're getting this notion that Gavin Newsom is hiding his power levels because he's a communist. It's Gavin fucking Newsom.
I don't think I said that. I think that he could pander to that base because he thinks that it's a base worth pandering to.
They have no power. These people,
and yet, in the late 2010s and the early 20s, they were being pandered to. And yet, dude, I'm sorry, I'm fucking 40, right? I'm old as shit. No, but I'm almost 40, so I'm just going to keep calling myself 40. So I'm fucking 40, man. I have a long memory. And so my long memory includes the 2010s and includes the late 10s and includes the early 20s, where, no offense, you guys were pandering to these people and making excuses for them. And the reason why you're not pandering to them as much anymore is because social media got bought by the world's richest man, who's a total, he basically let all the Nazis loose. And so now the Overton window has shifted right. That's the only reason why the progressive left and the fucking socialists and progressives and leftists and communists, that's the only reason why they're not being pandered to. It's because the Overton window has been blasted wide fucking open.
So I disagree on a lot of this stuff. So there was various different kinds of pandering that was being done. I think the one that has been discredited, at least for one side, apparently it is available for the other side, and apparently you endorse a form of it, is identity politics. This notion that we really, we ought to be catering specifically to certain groups and the kind of shrill
that cat's out of the bag.
No. But the thing is, you say that, but then you're like, oh, I actually do care about identity politics because I want at least the next president to somewhat consider preserving the race and ethnicity as it currently stands in America.
You know what I wanted 5 years ago? I wanted, maybe 10 years ago now, I wanted 1992, 1994 pop media anti-racism. Do you remember Captain Planet and do you remember Power Rangers?
Yes.
Remember how they had the white girl and the Asian girl And the black guy,
and she was the yellow Power Ranger.
right,
The black
she
guy
the
was
yellow ranger.
yeah.
The black guy was the Green Ranger. But
Those
it
were the
funnier if he
days.
was the black
Those were the days. Yeah.
Those were the days. Okay. So it was kind of like a very liberal conception where everybody was on the same page. We're all a bunch of different races, but we're all pushing in the same project, right? But what happened in the past like 2 or 3 decades is actually a lot of minorities. They said, hey, that's cool, but we're actually not on the same page. And we've actually been fucked over a lot historically. And we actually need to reckon with how we've been fucked over before we sign on to being on the same page. So that whole like 1990s thing, that was like a mirage. It was like an illusion of pop culture. And so now that we're in the morass of Northern Europeans becoming a plurality within the United States through demography, we're in a morass. I don't even know if I'm using the morass word correctly, but anyways, we're in a stew. We're in a cauldron of 1% of the population being Muslim, 0.5% of the population being Jewish. We have 13% of the population that's black, that's relatively stable. We got 24% that's Hispanic, that's probably going to grow. We got 5% that's Asian. We're going to have to take a look at this, and we're going to have to figure out how we negotiate culture together, because the truth is that we weren't on the same page. We just pretended that we were. So we have to get on the same page.
I'm trying to address what you're saying, which is that the Democrats did this like deal with the devil in the turn of the decade, and they were like pandering to certain ideas, and then they abandoned them quickly. One, I think it's only a certain set of ideas that I think were always cringe and have been cringe, and I certainly wasn't trying to pander to it back in the day. Like I say, sometimes I lost friends because I was like, white people should be able to wear sombreros and stuff like that. And you know what? Who the fuck cares? Like it's not a huge deal. Anyway, but yeah, there were some ideas that were bad that aren't in play as much anymore, for sure. But some of the pandering that existed has not gone away at all because those ideas were good and have carried through. So Biden's domestic policy was influenced a lot. Hang on a second. We have a super chat. Some of Biden's best domestic policy ideas were influenced by the Bernie stuff and this kind of more populist, leftist economic policy in the United States. It actually was. And the left has not abandoned more socialized medicine in any respect. That's a huge influence for Bernie. The left has not abandoned commitment to clean energy, that kind of stuff. So there's some ways in which the Overton window has shifted, mostly on like social, cultural stuff, cancellations, saying slurs, that kind of stuff. Query whether that's the right approach is to go like full on swing the other way and start calling your political rivals seriously retarded, as Trump did of Tim Walz. And so query whether that's a better state of affairs. But really, the Democratic Party is generally becoming more progressive, and they didn't abandon the kind of substantive progressive policies that they were influencing that 2020 Democratic primary. And that's a primary, dude. That's the other thing, is you guys read so much into that primary where, yeah, they were trying to outflank each other from the left-wing perspective because it was in a populist mood, and it was a more because it was a Democratic primary. For a Democratic populist, it's becoming more liberal and more left-wing. But that shouldn't be a sign that the Democratic Party is abandoning constitutionalism, that they're going to embrace Marxist-Leninism.
Yeah, my role within the political environment is fucking annoying, and I understand that. Okay, but Burke, I'll try to be as brief.
Wait. Sorry. Super chat says the black dude was the Black Ranger. How the fuck does he not know Tommy was the Green then White Ranger? Apparently, his memory isn't that long or good. Sorry. Go ahead.
Well, number one, there was a shitload of fucking shit, and you're saying the Black Ranger was black?
I think
that's awesome.
That's awesome.
I thought he was green, but that's okay. That's fine.
Was
shit,
the Black Ranger a black guy?
I'm talking about like OG.
Yes,
I'm talking about like
the original
like
Black Ranger. The original Black Ranger, Zach Taylor, was played by Walter Emmanuel Jones, who is black. His casting as the Black Ranger and Thuy Trangs, I don't know. I'm sorry for it's the Vietnamese name. I don't know.
Okay,
casting as Yellow Ranger has been criticized as a mistake by the show's former head writer.
Oh, but Black Ranger being black isn't wrong, but Yellow Ranger being Asian is wrong. Get the fuck out of here.
Anyway. That both were wrong. That they apologized for both of those.
Okay, well, I think both of them are based. But anyways, I understand that this is why this conversation is frustrating for you, but it's also the reason why the conversation is frustrating for me. Okay. And I'll try to be as brief as I can. Edmund Burke, the philosophical founder of
I'm sorry. Whenever you do this, it's like, I'll try to be as brief as I can. In the beginning, God created man in the heavens. Like,
it's true. It's
okay.
important.
All right. Burke is the guy.
Okay. Burke saw the French Revolution and said, what went wrong here? And what he said is the traditions and institutions of French society were so brittle and stagnant that people held on to things that were dead and they collapsed. Then he also argued that the revolutionaries were too revolutionary, where because they had no attachment to previous institutions, they basically threw the baby out with the bathwater. But institutions are ultimately seeded with centuries or millennia of human wisdom. And so it's kind of like somebody brought this fence rule up, which is like, don't remove a fence if you don't know what the fence is guarding against. I think it's like Chesterton or something like that. So that's kind of the conservative mindset. That's my job, okay? My job within the political landscape is to say, hey, right wing, you're holding on to institutions that are dead and brittle and are about to fall apart, and you're basically ruining society by holding on to things too tightly. And then it's my job to turn around and tell the lefties, the progressives, and say, hey, you guys are playing with fire. You're being really dangerous because you don't give sufficient credence to the institutions that came before you. And on top of that, here's some ideas that are good. These ideas are dog shit. That's actually my job within like the political ecosphere. And it's not a very popular job. A lot of people just don't like it because it's like being the wet blanket at a fucking party. Like these people don't want to party at all. And so you're trying to feed them shots. These people have already done 14 shots and they're about to shit their pants and throw up. It's my job as the wet blanket to say, hey man, have a couple of beers, have a good time. But it's also my job to say, don't do 14 shots in a row. You're going to get wasted and poop your pants.
Yeah.
Nobody likes that guy. But that's me.
I also sometimes feel like I have that role of, and that's why I think that like JD Vance should be an anathema to you. He's an arsonist. So is Trump. They're arsonists. They destroy things sometimes just to do it, just to say they do it. Sometimes their policies just seem like calibrated to be the most malicious and vicious thing possible, the most wrong they can be. And they almost take like this giddy, they get like this emotional release from burning things down for the sake of itself. The administration should be proof positive for that claim. But put that aside, let me talk a little bit about crystal ball in response to what you're saying. And anyway, the broader point is I'm not so sure that liberals can't have this kind of effect on and incorporate some of the progressive policies that I don't think that you would in principle have an issue with, at least from the perspective of communism, Marxist-Lenin, imminent like takeover by a dictatorship, that you can, in other words, stomach in a candidate. I don't think that there's something to say that liberals can't moderate the tendencies, authoritarian tendencies of some members of the left, if they exist among the broader democratic consensus. And I don't even think that it's true. It might exist within some influencers for sure. But let me talk about how Crystal Ball fits in that narrative. Crystal Ball said openly that she didn't really care much about procedure. She didn't really care, value the almost, some might say, fetishization of the Constitution prior to Trump's second term. And in retrospect, I heard both her and Kyle Kalinske say, the resistance libs were right, that these things actually do matter, that the kind of checks on this authority really do matter more than we gave them credit for. I heard them, self-consciously, state that. Now, maybe Hassan Piker didn't state that. Maybe Hassan Piker is this crypto tanky or whatever. But I have nothing to believe. I have no reason to think that the Democrats who are currently in power and who we are considering aren't A, committed to the Constitution, and B, able to prevent the worst excesses. That wasn't true of the Republican Party. I do think it's true of the Democratic Party and their ability to prevent their own base from becoming like authoritarian minions. Clearly, the Republican Party has failed at that. I don't think that there's evidence that the Democrats have.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I'm happy to hear Crystal Ball and Kyle Kalinske say that. I think the frustration though is keeping it, just with Chesterton's fence. What effectively happened is that on the right wing, they ripped down this fence, and they ripped down the fence with economic populism. They ripped down the fence with demagoguery. They ripped down the fence with cults of personality. They ripped down the fence with fascism. They ripped down the fence with all sorts of shit, like national conservatism. And so they ripped down that fence. And what they found very quickly is that they were swamped by people who were so desperate within an economic populist framework for any kind of salvation whatsoever, that all of the principles, if you look at my drawing, neocon, constitutional, social, fiscal, and Burke, almost all of that has been thrown out for national conservatism. Almost all of it. And so all these principles that I was raised with and hold dear, they've been destroyed by the removal of this fence. And so what I'm saying is, and you don't have to agree to a degree, you can say, well, our fence is better. Okay, our fence is better. It's going to hold. Don't worry about it. But I'm kind of like, I'm sitting here and I'm kind of telling you like, hey man, like, don't take out this fence post. I'm worried about this fence post. And so like, maybe I'm paranoid. Maybe I'm overly anxious. Maybe I'm policing you too hard. And you can take out that fence post and it will be fine. And the rest of the fence will hold. But it's kind of my job, I think, in order to caution you and say, hey man, we took out this fence on our side and we got fucked. That's what happened. That's what happened over the past decade.
Yeah,
and I need to grab
go for it.
I need to grab a Theracane, but I am listening.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is I think that you overestimate the ability of people such as Hassan Piker to grab hold of power. And I think that there just like is no evidence of that. And I think that you would find it disqualifying if Hassan Piker was signal boosted by these politicians, even though that isn't what we'd be doing. The politicians would be using Hassan Piker for his platform to try to encourage people to vote for him. And I think that you would see any kind of positive, friendly interaction with Hassan Piker as this disqualifying thing, in a way that JD Vance is
fucking alarming.
Why is it alarming?
Dude, Rashida Tlaib did like a 2-hour sit down with him and talked to him and gave him a hug. Who is it? AOC and Bernie Sanders have obviously done 5-minute sit downs. They're obviously way more optical in that consideration, where they used him for their audience, but they didn't let him use back. Mamdani did something similar to AOC and Bernie Sanders, where he sat down with them for 5 minutes and they had like lunch or whatever, and they only talked about policy.
They're clearly using him for his audience.
Sure, and I'm happy that they're politically astute enough to do so. However, I think that gives him credence that he is not entitled to. Okay, like if I was a social democrat, or if I was a democratic socialist, and then I had somebody that I did a podcast interview with immediately go over to the CCP, immediately go over to China and glaze the CCP in an authoritarian regime.
Yeah, do you want to know what you can do? You know, you'd be done talking to someone if they visited China and glazed the regime.
Fuck yeah, dude! Like, hold on. You think that if Nick Fuentes, like let's say JD,
I would
Vance,
talk to Fuentes.
I would talk to Fuentes too, but we would have a contested conversation.
Sure, yeah.
Let's say Nick Fuentes went to fucking Russia and glazed Russia and said, "Oh, we need to do this here in America." Bad. Like Tucker Carlson. Yeah, we would criticize the fuck out of that, right?
Yeah, we would.
And we do,
yeah,
right?
That's why it's great when Mamdani was asked about the 9/11 comments. You know what Mamdani said?
He disavowed
it. So what's the problem?
Okay, but
these Democrats are doing their job when they're.
Hold on. You think that JD Vance, because JD Vance, if he got like a specific question where
he will
was like,
never, ever.
Carlson,
yes, he will.
You're right that he probably won't.
Yes, of course not.
But if Tucker Carlson said, "Oh, actually, like Hitler wasn't so bad," do you think like if JD Vance said, "Oh, actually, you know what? I don't agree with Tucker on that one." Do you think that's that means that JD Vance and Tucker Carlson aren't politically aligned?
No, I don't think that it means that they're not politically aligned, but it means that counter to what people like JD Vance and Trump are doing, who are indulging in the worst possible impulses, Democrats are incentivized to be sane and moderate in a way that Republicans are incentivized to be unhinged and incentivized to give in to the indulgent impulse. That's the difference. is Mamdani feels a need to moderate, to talk to the police and be like, hey, I don't think we need to defund the police. We don't need to be enemies of the police. We don't need to get rid of the police. He feels the need to say things like, I condemn the Hassan Piker 9/11 comments, whereas JD Vance will only ever be like, yeah, they're definitely eating the cats and dogs. And yeah, like, I don't give a fuck. And why are we talking about these people who are saying slurs in my administration and on these different chats? Like, who cares about it? Let's rehire them. That's the difference.
Okay. Well, okay. We'll add some negative points in the categories for dishonest pieces of shit.
Yeah, to me, it's like,
and I'll give Mamdani a -2, and I'll give JD Vance a -20 or a -10.
Yeah, like that's what I mean. Like, Mamdani owns it and is like able, like, he'll own being a democratic socialist, and he doesn't hide from that. He quotes Eugene Debs. He very much is. He worked. I think he did like things for the Gravel.
I need to reinforce this with you though, because I think that Doobie said that he doesn't perceive China the same way that I perceive China. Okay, the way that I perceive China is that, all right, in the beginning, God created
the first empire was the Qin dynasty.
Okay. Actually, that's like the third empire.
No, is the Zhang?
But anyway,
the Zhang, or is that the second one?
The Qing are actually Manchu.
Not Qing.
They're from Manchuria.
Qin.
Yeah.
Qin. I think that
Qing.
It's
QING.
The zone.
Yeah.
There's something like
I would have to take a look. I would have to refresh because
this.
honestly, I did like more recent Chinese history. But anyways, the point is that the nationalist capitalist people in the early 20th century were not competent. They were corrupt. They didn't fight the Japanese sufficiently. They let hundreds of thousands or millions of Chinese civilians die. So the communists became popular. But once the communists became popular, they did horrible shit. Like Mao Zedong's Great Leap Forward was an economic and humanitarian disaster that killed millions, if not tens of millions of people. The Cultural Revolution in the early 1970s, right before the United States normalized relations with China, was a fucking horror show. Arguably, what happened was Mao Zedong knew that when he died, that there were going to be politicians who tried to reinstantiate capitalism or state capitalism as a part of the Chinese project. And he was so worried about that he worked his youth up into a frenzy to the point that they beat to death several 100,000 Chinese people. They turned in their own parents for thought crimes. They turned in their own teachers for thought crimes. And they basically beat them to fucking death. And so immediately after that, the capitalist roaders is what they call them, the people who build roads into capitalism, the Dengists, they reinstantiated state capitalism, and America normalized relations with China, viewing its incredible industrial capacity. Well, what's happened is China is arguably a more competent fascist regime, political corporatist and flexible authoritarianism. They're arguably a more efficient and stable fascist regime than Nazi Germany ever was. And so what they've done with that power is they've created an incredible police state. They've created an incredible surveillance apparatus. They've created an incredible cultural homogeneity. They've also routinely disappeared political dissidents. And the Falun Gong and the Uyghurs. The Uyghurs have arguably been culturally genocided, where maybe they didn't die, but Uyghur women were force moved into Han Chinese men's houses where they would either have sex or get married or have kids. The Uyghur men were put into work camps for a decade, so they couldn't participate in terroristic activities. They were prohibited from worshiping Islam, and the only part of their culture that they were allowed to keep was like dance and music. So China, not a decade ago, not 2 decades ago, not 2 centuries ago, within the past 10 to 20 years committed a cultural genocide. And that's the regime that Hassan Piker is sweeping for. Not just that, but if you go ahead and check out the UN on stolen organs, it's effectively strongly believed that rich people can go to China and buy vital organs instantaneously. If you need a heart, if you need a liver, if you need intestines, if you need whatever, you can go to China right now and you can get it within 2 weeks. It's strongly suspected that the Chinese government is harvesting healthy organs from political dissidents. They just euthanize them and steal their organs. So that to me is the current Chinese regime. Sweeping for that is a moral horror akin to being alive at the same time as Hitler and sweeping for Nazi Germany. That's what that is to me. So Hassan Piker, in my world, is a fucking Nazi. He's a piece of shit. he shouldn't be allowed in American politics.
Shouldn't be allowed, meaning culturally, socially, it should be taboo.
Yeah, talking to
Or
Hassan
when you say
Piker and
allowed,
being a part of the stream
people would say
should be-
allow. They usually mean like we should stop them.
I
with
don't mean
force.
legally prohibited.
Okay.
I'm saying that having a softball interview and taking your feet and taking your toes and wrapping them together with Hassan Piker in an interview, that should be viewed the same as being intimate with a fucking Nazi. That's the way I feel about that.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Well, Doobie, that answers the question. I want to be clear that did not say such things, horrible, defamatory things about Chairman Ping, Xi Jinping, and I don't have any
Deng
views.
Xiaoping as a capitalist rotor, I mean, he arguably was.
I'm joking. The glorious nation. I totally disagree with glazing China, with glazing Russia, with glazing these different states. I'm not sure that I would consider the Chinese state as currently it is to be comparable to the level of Nazi Germany. You say that? I don't know.
I would just research it and see where you stand on it afterwards. I mean, do you think cultural genocide is cool?
By cultural genocide, do you mean
probably not, right? Do you think forced organ harvesting is cool?
Wait. By cultural
Probably
genocide,
not, right?
By cultural genocide, are you referring to the practice of arbitrarily detaining people based on their ideology and their religion and their views?
Yeah.
But you support the detention of Mahmoud Khalil for his views.
Yeah, because he's being deported. We're not forced. We're number one, we're not keeping him in a work camp for a decade and then moving in another guy with his wife.
Well,
number
comfort,
two, we're not euthanizing him and
se-
stealing his vital organs. We're deporting him to his country of origin.
Yeah, but the counterpoints of China would say, listen, these are radicals and they need to align with the Chinese values. They're radical Muslims, these Uyghurs, and we're not deporting them or anything. Deporting is really bad. I don't know what you know. Like, if you're a permanent resident, like exile and deportation are huge sanctions of the state. You're like, oh, it's not like we're doing anything bad. We're just like removing him from his family and his wife and his newborn child.
I view that as substantially less bad than euthanasia and forced organ harvesting.
Okay, I mean,
obviously,
I don't know the extent, and I don't know what the evidence is for euthanasia and forced harvesting of what you're talking about. Maybe it's the case. I'm sure that they do like target people who are ideological regimes of. And hang on, another super chat from Doobie. This dude calls himself a Philosemite. I don't know what that means. And a tepid Zionist while justifying or dismissing never-ending reports from those same human rights orgs about Israel's never-ending war crimes, etc. That's the super chat. Before you respond to that, I just want to say, like, the counterpoints of China would be like, this isn't anything. We're not deporting them. We're not getting rid of them. We're just trying to integrate them forcibly because in order to be a real citizen of China, you need to be, but that's what the counterpoints of China would be saying. Similar to what you're saying about Mahmoud Khalil, but you support what the administration is doing to Mahmoud Khalil. So don't you have a huge...
Yeah, and I also... But here's the thing.
Contradiction.
Number one, I don't think the counterpoints of China exists because he's been propagandized into supporting the CCP through an Orwellian police state. So I don't think CCP points. I don't think he exists. And if he does, he's a CCP shill. But I'm not CCP points. I'm American counterpoints. And American counterpoints has been propagandized into a liberal system of government, which actually happens to be the correct one. So Mahmoud Khalil, you can say that like exile is a grievous state sanction. I agree.
Yeah. How would you feel if the government ripped you from your family, pushed you out, and didn't let you be with your newborn baby child? How would you feel about that?
Yeah, that'd be pretty fucked up, obviously. Yeah. But also don't support terrorist organizations relatively easily.
Yeah.
So and also, by the way,
your opinion, dude.
I joke about firing Hassan Piker from a trebuchet into the Caribbean Ocean / Atlantic with the Coast Guard standing by to kill him if he tries to come back onto the American soil. I don't mean that. And I think the world would be a worse place if I got my way. Emotionally, I think Hassan Piker is effectively a Nazi propagandist who just happens to be born in my nation to the point that he can unrepentantly.
In what sense is he a Nazi?
Authoritarian regimes.
In what sense is he a Nazi? When you say he's a Nazi,
better place. I just want to finish this idea. I think the world is a better place that I am not legally permitted to fire him from a trebuchet into the Caribbean.
Though you
the
would
world's
like
a better
to?
place because I can't hurt Hassan Piker.
In what sense is Hassan Piker a Nazi? That JD
I would
Vance
say
doesn't
he
qualify?
screwed the CCP. And I view the CCP and I view China similarly to the authority. Nazi Germany wishes it had the kind of power and coherence that the CCP does.
Oh, I love that you're fucking, and this is so fucking annoying, especially from you, Connor. Words matter until they don't. So when someone says socialism means like whatever they mean it is like this Nordic model, you're like, no, it can't mean it. It only has to mean the decarbonization modification. This is the basic whatever inflexible authoritarianism. That's what you say whenever someone says that. But you say Nazi can mean just kind of like China. Words matter until they don't. That's bullshit.
No, my words still matter. Nazi Germany was a fascist regime, which is political corporatism and flexible authoritarianism. I think China is politically corporatist and flexibly authoritarian. I think they're a fascist regime.
That's what defines Nazism?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So,
dude, I've already told you. You know what? And I'll tell you something. You just got all fucking energetic or whatever. I'll tell you something that pisses me off.
Yeah, go for it.
Watching you, Destiny, Tim Miller, all these twats talking about fascism. None of y'all can like just Google it. You can't just like Google Giovanni Gentile. You can't Google flexible authoritarianism. You can't Google political corporatism.
This is so crazy.
Like, it's this vague right-wing authoritarian thing. And Umberto Eco has the 14 points, although that describes almost all states. Yeah,
this
that's
this
like
garbage.
I watch you guys debate that, and it makes me want to hammer my balls into the table with a ball ping hammer.
Here's the problem that you don't want to realize. Do you think that words have objective meanings?
No, but I think they have correct definitions.
So when you say correct definition, what do you mean exactly?
I mean a definition that captures the actual object most accurately.
No, that's what I'm asking. Is what does it mean to accurately describe its object? What does it mean for a definition to be correct in that sense, in the accuracy department?
Using this as an example, if your definition sucks,
what does it mean for a definition to suck?
It applies to a ton of things.
Yeah.
Whereas
this is the confusion. So when you say it's bad,
why? Because you use lay, you use lay interpretations. That's how it's used in common parlance.
No. So words don't have objective meanings. You granted that. And you're like, well, I view a definition to be better or worse depending on if it's accurate. And I'm like, and then, okay, well, accurate, you mean what? You're like, well, if it's so broad, if it's broad enough to, but the thing is, a word's meaning is its usage. It's its usage. These are just utterances that we're saying to convey concepts. And if your definition isn't grounded to a particular usage or maybe it's grounded in some technical definition or whatever, but you're on no ground to say, well, the concept could cover like a bunch of different things and therefore the definition sucks. If the usage tracks the fact that the concept itself is maybe broader than you think it ought be, then too bad for you. You don't have to you have this normative view of words that we can't have concepts that are like not hyper specific. You know, by that logic, Mamdani is not a communist. But in any definition that you provide, Mamdani would not be a communist or a socialist. But you have no problem calling him a socialist or a communist because your definition of communism is so hyper narrow that it wouldn't include, universal healthcare, like a system where with basically all public controlled entities, but there's some space for capital because it's not the total decommodification or whatever your definition is. Because your definitions are so hyper specific that they can almost never be applied except in the one particular case. Like you would say, China is not a communist country, correct?
Yeah, they're state capitalists.
Yeah, and there's never been a communist country, correct?
Yeah, but there's people who are ideological.
So understand. You can come at me and say, wait, no, let me finish. You can respond. You can come and say, your word is so broad. You're so broad. It's so ridiculously broad. But I'm just tracking common usage and what the people understand the term to mean. And you come in and say, oh, but my definitions are awesome. They're so good. They never apply and have never applied ever.
Except for mine do. So
not in any country. Not in any country.
Yeah, I'll explain that momentarily. So if you actually go to Marx and Engels use communism and socialism in like as synonyms. And what's happened after the fact is that like socialist ideologues have interpreted these things to be like social state capitalism being a necessary precursor for socialism and socialism being the decommodification of basic human needs and workers owning the means of production, and then communism being the end goal of a moneyless, stateless, classless society. Marx and Engels actually never said that. Like that's actually an interpretation of their works. But most socialists in the 20th century, most communists in the 20th century have that view. And so, by the way, this is how, well, actually, I don't want to jump there because that would distract from the point. The point is that when you say there's no communist society that's ever worked, that's ever been in society, you're right. Humanity has not achieved a moneyless, stateless, classless society. However, that does not mean that communists being in power has never existed, because there were people who thought that the end goal was a moneyless, stateless, classless society, and they would push society until they achieved that end goal. And so this is where I'm getting frustrated with you. The definitions are specific enough to be understandable, and they're not only are they understandable, they can be accurate. So if I define a chair as things that I stick up my ass, but then that has no correlation with reality, then it's a bad definition. Okay.
Yeah,
and the way that Stephen and Tim Miller use fascism is incomprehensible.
No. So we are going to figure this out because I see this bullshit everywhere. When you say it's a bad definition, what are you saying?
I'm saying that you are using a definition that is bad at describing the thing.
No, when you say bad at describing the thing, I'm asking you what you mean by bad. In what sense is it bad?
It makes conversations worse, not better.
By virtue of what?
By virtue of my evaluation as a biological being who values communication with other members of my species.
So our definition is bad because you think it makes conversations worse, and it makes it worse because?
It makes it worse because you capture a lot of things that are not that thing using your definition.
Okay, so when I say human being, does that capture a lot of things?
I mean, it conjures a single thing.
Well, I mean, but think about all the different humans that exist. It's so vague. I mean, like, think about all the, like, you're going to use a term that applies so broadly to every single human?
No, Pisco. See, here's where you're just wrong, and I want you to listen to me. So, a vague conception of right-wing authoritarianism, do you think that...
No. Answer what I'm talking about. No, we're doing this.
That's the definition you use, so I'll go ahead and do it. Do you think Russia is right-wing and authoritarian?
I think Russia is right-wing and authoritarian, yeah.
Okay, do you think Iran is right-wing and authoritarian?
Yeah.
Okay. These are different systems of governance.
That's not my definition of fascism.
Okay, give me your definition of fascism.
Okay, wait a second. So, do you know my definition of fascism, yes or no?
I saw you debate it one time.
You either can say yes, you know it, or no, you don't know it.
I saw you talk for 3 minutes about right-wing authoritarianism as your definition of fascism. So I don't know your specific definition of fascism.
So given that
if you got a better one in the meantime, that would be excellent. I would actually be incredibly happy.
So you're wrong. So we can go back to the PF Young conversation, and I just want to know if you'll acknowledge when he asks me my view on it, and I say something that's not right-wing authoritarianism. I just want to know if you will say I was wrong to characterize your definition that way. Will you actually admit that you're wrong if I take the time to pull this up? You won't admit you're wrong, even if I demonstrably show that.
No, I won't admit I'm wrong because I don't even know if it's the PF Young conversation. It could be, but there was a conversation where you got into a debate about fascism, and you talked about right-wing authoritarianism vaguely for like 2 or 3 minutes. There wasn't a...
No, we were very specific. We were very specific.
X, Y, Z, A, B, C.
So here, I'll help you out.
That I want.
So fascism is a political ideology, okay? Agree on that so far, correct?
Yes.
It is not necessarily a particular government that exists. It's not necessarily any one policy. It is a set of political beliefs and propositional and dispositional attitudes that one has, a collection of them. Agree with that so far?
You're already using too many words, but continue.
Wait. When you say you're saying too many words, what do you mean by too many in that context?
What I mean by the fact is like using what you just used, that describes like every political ideology already.
I'm not done, dipshit, but you're saying I'm already using too many words.
Yeah, if I asked you for the definition of a blue whale, you would go, oh, it's a seaborn mammal, gray or blue in color, and it weighs 1,200 pounds. You wouldn't go, it's a part of
but that would be, hang on a second.
Of this species, and a part of that would be a bad definition, obviously.
Wait.
Keep going, though.
You just, when you say it's a bad definition, what the fuck do you mean it's bad?
I mean, you are laying out things that incorporate many things that have nothing to do with fascism.
First of all, I'm not done. And what you said is it was too many words. And that seems to be like, oh, then I should use less word. And when you say use less word, that's going to be a more broad concept. So for example, you said blue whale or whale, whatever. It's a large creature that's gray, whatever. You're like, well, if I were like, that's too many words, what would your response be to that? Because what you just said about whale,
I would say no. I was done already.
Hang on a second.
You're still going in like 4 minutes.
Would you agree that definition of whale sucks that you gave just then?
It might be overly specific, but then we could argue about that.
It's far too broad.
Okay. Continue with your definition of fascism.
Wait, no.
Because you have a political ideology that doesn't have specific
if we're going to do... Wait.
Write it down.
Hang on a second. If we're going to do this, you need to engage honestly, Connor. You need to engage honestly. So when I ask you a question, I want a fucking answer. So when I say, do you agree that fascism is a political ideology? You answer yes, correct?
Yep.
I don't want to hear these extraneous comments of too many words, whatever. Stop with this meta shit. Just get to the point. Do you agree or not? And you can disagree for other reasons. Do you agree?
Okay, it's a political ideology. Hold on. Okay. Since you have such a good definition, you should be able to repeat it. I'll write it down.
Yeah.
It's a political ideology that doesn't have specific precepts.
No, I didn't say that. I'm not done.
Then say it again.
Wait, no. It's not done. I'm building it out.
I'm asking you for it. Okay. Go.
So I am asking you at every step. Do you agree? All right. Do you agree that it's a political ideology? You said yes. Do you agree that it's a set of political beliefs? It's not just one, correct? It's a bunch of attitudes to a bunch of different things, correct?
Yes.
I take fascism to be the political ideology whose archetype is Mussolini's fascism and Adolf Hitler's Nazism. That those are the archetypes. Do you understand what an archetype is?
Yeah.
And someone who's a fascist has significant degrees of proximity to those archetypes. That's what it is. And unfortunately, when you try to make it more broad than that or more narrow than that, and you're just not going to cover how the term is used. So when I say a definition is good or bad, I'm saying with reference to how the term is used, because there is no objective meaning to words. And so when I give you, it's a political ideology whose archetype is blah, blah, blah. That's what we're talking, and degrees of proximity close to it. All of these ideologies work that way. If I say, what is republicanism? You're going to give me an archetype, and it's degrees of proximity to that archetype, where there are going to be hard cases and easy cases for a Republican. Right now, for you, I think it's a hard case about whether you're a Republican. And we all know that self-ID, right? That's not going to be enough to fit for a lot of these archetypes. If I just identify as a fascist, or I just identify as a Republican, that's not going to be sufficient for most people. Like we ridiculed either Vosh or Demon Mama, whoever it was, when they were like, well, just identifying as a trans person makes you a trans person. That's a reductive definition that's not going to work or service anything. So it is, unfortunately, there are gray areas, but it's a political ideology whose archetype is fascist Italy and Nazi Germany, and its degrees of proximity. Okay. And how do you get to those degrees of proximity is in different traits. These traits are not sufficient conditions. All right.
What do you?
Yes.
Because you said that fascism is proximity. Politically.
No, I didn't say it is proximity. It is an ideology which is significantly, and that is going to be a term that, again, I can't give you a more specific one than that. Close in degrees of proximity. No, because if you say it's exactly if you said it's exactly this set of ideas, it's not capturing how the word is used, Connor. You understand that? If I tell you,
I don't care. You're using a lot of words.
Wait, no, stop. I'm not going to engage with you if you're bad faith like that. You're using a lot of words. Do you understand the words I'm saying or not? And if you don't understand them, stop and we can have a conversation.
Okay, I just don't think they're relevant.
They are relevant.
I want to ask you a follow-up question.
No. Stop for a second. You said you're using too many words. So when I said that it's
I've been waiting for you to stop talking for 2 minutes because I wanted to ask you a follow-up question. Can you stop talking at some point?
When I say you can't get more narrow, then you don't track usage. Do you understand what I'm saying there?
You're trying to use fascism in the way that it's colloquially used by lay people.
No. That regardless
common
of
usage, there's no objective definition.
Both in an academic sense and in the ordinary usage of the term fascism, that usage doesn't track a hyper-specific application of the term where it only includes Giovanni Gentile's versions of it. That wouldn't track, for example, the labeling of General Franco as a fascist or other fascist regimes in Latin America.
I disagree with your hypothesis. I would like to test what you just stated.
Test in what sense?
What do you think Mussolini's Italy and Hitler's Nazism share in common?
Yeah, so I'm not understand how that's testing anything. What is that testing? I will answer the question. Why are you testing?
You're saying, I'll explain it. So you're saying that your definition is proximate to these two ideologies. Well, if both of these ideologies are fascist, then we should be able to identify features that are common in both.
And we are able to.
So I want to ask you, what features do you think are common in both that you think identifies these as fascist?
Yeah, so those features, if you listen to the discussion I'm having with P.F. Jung, I lay out, and to be clear, they are not right-wing authoritarianism. That doesn't encompass them. And I want to be clear, I will now start listing off features, but those features are not independently sufficient conditions. Do you understand what I say when I say they're not sufficient conditions?
One of them is not enough to just say it's fascist.
Right. It's a cluster concept. And so when people are like, wow, you have all these different points and you're saying so many things, it's because, unfortunately, you need to do that to track the usage of the term. And if that pisses you off, so be it. That's just how the term is used. And if you have a problem with it, so be it.
Cluster.
Okay. And at every cluster, you're going to tell me, first of all, do you agree so far with what I said? So just be clear where we are. That it's a political ideology that has a set of political beliefs whose archetype is fascist Italy and Nazi Germany. Do you agree with that?
I should probably Google the term archetype just so I absolutely know with 100% certainty that I agree with it.
Okay, I'll give you the Google definition of archetype. The typical example of a certain person or thing.
Sure, it's close enough.
Okay, so how do we get to the archetype of Nazi Germany and fascist Italy? Is through the following clusters of traits, of features. And at each one, you're going to tell me if you disagree. First, ultra-nationalism. Where okay, so we agree on that. We agree also on authoritarian government, by which I mean where the leader's authority is prized and valued above democratic structures, above rule of law, above democracy and rights. In other words, an ideology that's premised on authoritarianism and the great leader. Agreed?
Yes.
Okay. We have, in addition to ultranationalism and authoritarianism, myth-making. That is, hearkening back to a mythological past in which greatness was achieved. And where we ought to hearken back to if we want to get to a promising future. So that is in the context of fascist Italy, perhaps Roman mythological history, and for fascists, for Germany, it's the previous Reichs and the German people, that kind of thing. Do you agree with that? Myth making.
I agree. It's common, but I just want to make a caveat.
It's not a sufficient condition.
I think ultranationalism is a key component of fascism. I think that authoritarianism and the worship of the great man is a key component of fascism. I think that myth-making is common in fascist societies, but I think you said it's not sufficient or whatever, that term. Yeah, myth making
Yeah,
alone.
I do myth making, right? Like we're talking about
Yeah.
Lincoln and all these people. So, but these are people.
But I did want to differentiate it categorically from authoritarianism and ultranationalism because I think those are necessary components, whereas I don't think myth making necessary is. It's common.
I would happen to agree.
Common.
I happen to agree that I think that ultranationalism and authoritarianism are usually necessary to people's. And the reason why I think they're necessary is if they aren't there, it doesn't track usage. So whenever I'm saying it's necessary for the definition, I just mean we will diverge wildly from usage if we don't include those components in there.
Sure.
Next is conspiracy. Conspiracy at the center of an ideology. In the case of, the notion of Nazi Germany, stabbed in the back, where they're all plotters against us, going after internal enemies. So conspiracy is at the center of fascism. Fascism,
it's, I think, common but not required. So I'm still clustering it.
Reactionary politics, by which I mean anti-communism. That is even though there's, Mussolini himself was a socialist prior to the turn. The archetypes are characterized by persecution of communists, anti-communism, destroying communism, contrary to communism. That's not for me to say that like it's fully capitalistic or something.
I think that's actually a necessary component because fascist philosophy and a moneyless, stateless class of society are necessarily opposed.
Yeah.
So I'm okay with that being a core component.
Yeah. So anti-communism, reactionary politics, traditional conservatism in the sense of the relationship of the family, and the ordering of society. These are societies that went really hard in their, even though a few people were degenerate Nazis or whatever, they are social conservatives. They are not drawing from socially progressive people, even though some socially progressive people, this again I don't think is like a necessary component. There are some progressive fascist thought, but this is just that in general fascist movements are socially conservative. They are against gay marriage. Certainly.
There's a cult of traditionalism.
They're against women being in prominent positions of authority. They're in favor of hierarchy. These are all things that are archetype, part of the archetype, and that's true of fascist Italy. It's true of Nazi Germany. And then I think finally, for me, and we can keep going if you want, but expansionist military policy, and that's true of Italy. Okay. And that's true of Germany. And they want to, it almost by necessity, they start by looking for enemies internally, and then they have to find them externally. And that's it does sort of lead to expansionist empire for Nazi Germany, Lebensraum for Italy, Ethiopia, all these different places. And so those are what I think are like the core fascistic traits. There are more. It's not an exhaustive list, but this is why when people try to say, "Oh, you make it too complicated," because it's just tracking how the term is used. And this is, by the way, the kind of analysis we would run for Democrat or liberal, right? Who's a liberal? A liberal is someone who believes in freedom. Okay, well, like that you're going to need to be a little bit more specific on that and what you mean by that. Same thing for a Democrat. A Democrat generally believes this, but it's not. You can be a Democrat and be pro-life. You can be a Democrat and believe in small government. So there's this way of analyzing these political philosophies and ideologies is not weird. It's not too long, and it's properly calibrating the usage. And if you want a simple thing, it is a political ideology whose archetype is fascist Italy and Nazi Germany. That is the definition.
Okay. I want to give you feedback, and then I want to provide my definition, and I want you to try to poke holes in it. Okay. So feedback on the definition. I agree with you that there's actually a lot here that I agree with. It is a political ideology, and it is a set of beliefs where there's like cores here, or clusters, I think you use the term. Mm-hmm. I take fascism to be historically archetypical. Maybe you didn't say historically, but I'm adding that. Mussolini in Italy and Hitler in Germany and their ideologies. That's just historically descriptively true. Fascism is proximate to these archetypes. That's descriptively true. There was 3 things that you said that I think are core to fascism, and there's 4 things that you said that I don't think are core. Ultranationalism, authoritarianism, and anti-communism. I don't think that like ultranationalism. So nationalism, I use as I'm swapping it in my brain for people. Like you're identifying a tribe of people. It doesn't have to be racial. It doesn't have to be ethno-religious, but there's a clear in-out group. Okay. Mm-hmm. And that's what I typically take with ultranationalism is we have a very clear tribe of who is in the club. And if you're not in the club, fuck you.
Pause real quick. So when people take issue with like, what's ultra? That's like a primitive, man. Like I can't, it would be like me saying, define what very means or extremely.
Yeah.
These are primitives that you like either in to the average person or to the average political ideology. It's some fixture there, but it's not anything more specific than that. It's a primitive.
If I was an ultra civic nationalist, then what that would mean in my mind is that if you could be an American citizen, you could be born here, but if you did not believe in the Constitution of the United States, you're not an American, and therefore you're not a part of my political tribe. Now, I believe that kind of, but I would never treat somebody like that, like Prime Kai or Hassan Piker or anybody else. I would never treat them as an external part of my tribe because I think the world's better when we live under the civic governance that we have right now. But that's a side point. Anti-communism. The reason why I don't think this is necessarily like structural to the definition, but the reason why anti-communism is a key component or at least a non-contradictory component of fascism is because fascism does value the struggle of the individual in order to assert power over others. Whereas communism, a moneyless, stateless class of society, is actually trying to resolve conflict between people. And so they're antithetical in this way, in which fascism embraces the struggle of the individual, whereas communism is trying to solve the struggle of the individual. They're antithetical philosophical answers to existence. Then myth-making, I wrote down palingenesis. The palingenetic ultranationalism is the way some people define fascism. Palingenesis is common throughout all of history. Almost every society has some kind of myth-making and for their society, so that's why. Also, conspiracism. It's common. It's common in fascist thought. It's common in fascist propaganda. But conspiracy theories exist, I mean, amongst libertarians. Like some of the most conspiracy-brained people in our country are conspiracists. So it's not intrinsic. Cult of traditionalism, common, not intrinsic. Expansionist military policy, common, not intrinsic. So that's my feedback on your definition.
Yeah, there are other clusters as well. But I just think that using this archetype style is the best way to track how words are used in this, or how this specific word and these ideologies are used. And that anything that isn't like that, right, is, you can say that it's not in keeping with some technical textbook definition, and maybe you could be correct about that. But what I take a word's meaning, like its correct meaning to be, is specific to the usage that I'm citing, either a technical usage, either an academic usage, or the common usage. And in this case, I think both the technical usage and the academic usage don't have this like limitation where basically only fascist Italy and Nazi Germany as such qualify for fascism.
Sure. I'm going to give you my very simple definition.
Okay.
And then I'm going to explain it, because obviously just because something is simple and small doesn't mean that it isn't complex.
Yeah.
Okay. So my definition is fascism is political corporatism and flexible authoritarianism. That's it. So now that I'm going to talk for 5 minutes, Levitate Grin and Beef Supreme, I know they're fucking with me in my chat, but you guys can eat a dick, because that definition is what, like flexible authoritarianism and political corporatism. It's 5 words. Okay. But now we have to explain the concept, and I have a drawing.
I'll let you do that for 100%. I will definitely let you do that. But to be clear, just because the definition is more simple doesn't mean it's more accurate. And when I say accurate, right, I mean that it coheres with the usage. Accuracy. Okay.
I also want to explain
by which accuracy. We mean that you're talking about usage, correct? You're not. Is there something else that you mean by accurate?
No, there's something else that I mean by accurate.
Okay, then what do you mean by accurate?
Like technical. Like if people used,
yeah,
I don't know,
in a technical. So you could be referring to a technical usage, and so maybe it's wrong.
I'm referring to a technical usage.
Okay.
I'm referring to a usage that fascists themselves would believe.
Oh well, that is going to be. That's going to be the self-ID thing, right? Because you're going to say that like
no, it's not. Do you think that when MAGA calls Obama communist, they're accurate because they use the word commonly?
No,
of course not. It's
well,
because
that's because I think that they're not tracking
definition behind communism.
Hang
right?
on. So we have to separate out the application sometimes and also the usage. The common understood usage of communism would be something that was very far afield from what Obama did. Secondly, the technical usage also wouldn't track that. So on both accounts, I don't think that it would, even though they call him that doesn't mean that the common usage, what they understand communism to be, if you were to ask them apropos of nothing, that they would describe something close to what Barack Obama is. And the denominator should not be MAGA itself. It should be all of population or these particular technical groups that you want to cite to. So for example, in the law, we'll cite like courts, like the technical definition of the term insurrection. The usage that we're talking about is the technical usage by this group of lawyers. Now, if what you're saying is, well, I'm going by the definition that fascists themselves use, that would be like saying, unless there's some reason to hew to that definition, or like that you think that is like we ought to, it would be like saying, well, I'll go by the trans community's definition of what they mean by trans, and what they mean by trans is whoever identifies as trans, and you would never accept that.
Let's. I don't want to quibble. Okay. I want to get into the nitty gritty, because political corporatism has a definition, and I'm showing it to you on your screen right now. Okay, so this is a human body. It's got a dick and balls. It's got legs. It's got bones. It's got a heart. It's got pectorals. It's got a white blood cell. It's got intestines.
It's a picture of it's a drawing of a human being. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So political corporatism can incorporate, ironically, corporations, but that's actually not the way that fascists use it. They're saying conceptualize the nation state, so the nation being the people and the state being the government, as a single biological organism. Okay. And people have roles within this biological organism. The government, ideally, would be the brain. The heart would be the economy. The bones would be the culture. The skin would be the military. The balls would be training, education, and academia. And the white blood cells would be the security apparatus. And so you can go so on and so forth. And so the argument from fascists is that through liberalism, capitalism, communism, we've either thought of ourselves as individuals struggling against other individuals, even though we're a part of the same thing within a nationalist tribe, or we've been tricked into making alliance with what are effectively parasites. And so that's why Jews, Black people, Roma, gays, homosexuals, they were identified as viruses, bacteria, vermin, worthy of extermination, because they weren't part of the political corporative group. They were a cancer or a virus or a disease or a bacteria. And so the whole point of the fascist is, yes, to seize political power and maintain political power through any means necessary, but it's also to advocate for the corporative health of the group. And so this is actually, political corporatism, I think, is quite parallel to ultranationalism. Okay.
So by this, but on this view, Kirk is trivially a fascist.
Kirk is Charlie Kirk?
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
100%.
So
like national conservatives,
yeah.
National conservatives. If I'm arguably a political corporatist, but if you're a political corporatist who doesn't care about due process, who doesn't care about republicanism, who doesn't care about monarchy, who doesn't care about the church, who doesn't care about any system of government, yeah, you're actually a fascist. As a matter of fact, a lot of fascists believe that people instinctually are fascist.
But the fascist governments, they worked. Fascist Italy worked with the Pope,
The church.
and so did the Nazi Germany. Made alliances, though they were a lot more weird about whether they were fully Christian. They definitely worked with these institutions. Are you suggesting that propping up these institutions is incompatible with fascism? I hope you're not suggesting that.
I'm not.
Okay.
So that gets into flexible authoritarianism, which I also think I have a drawing for. But do you have any? Do you have any?
Yeah, I have a response to
Quibble
that.
with political corporatism.
So I'm not so sure that I fully understand the concept. That's first off, and I maybe I'll have to ask
Just
questions.
analogize the nation state to a human body.
Yeah, that doesn't
and
really
then
help me.
advocate for its health.
That doesn't help me understand it, because by that version, like, I would be a political corporatist, right?
And a fascist would argue that you are. But the second half is what changes everything.
Okay. But if everyone who believes in America as a nation is engaging in political corporatism, then really, keep in mind, you were coming after me because your view of my definition was that it was only right-wing authoritarianism. But now your definition is actually, when we pull it apart, effectively broader than mine. It's just flexible authoritarianism, not even related to an ideology at all. And so your misconception, you soyed out at not just me, at Destiny and at Tim Miller. You said, you guys are so insane. It's like your fascist definition is just right-wing authoritarianism. But when we ground out yours, it seems like the only distinction that you're making, because like in some sense, everyone is a political corporatist who believes in like the health of a nation as a whole.
Libertarians aren't. Liberals aren't.
Liberals are. I'm a liberal. I am.
Hold on. Let's talk about this. Okay, let's talk about this. And bear in mind, you're acting like you have this sweet dunk, but we've only gone into half the definition so far.
Yeah, I know.
So libertarians do not buy into the political corporatist model. You are you. I am me. I don't give a fuck about you. You want to do drugs. You want to bang hookers. You want to get AIDS. You want to get herpes. You want to die early. That's your problem. I'm a if you're a libertarian, you're an individualist. You believe in the supremacy and the sovereignty of the individual. Oftentimes, political corporatist arguments are rooted in the collective good as restraints on the individual. Libertarians actually view that as evil. So no, not everybody is a political corporatist.
I kind of view even like moderate. I guess the ANCAPs and the Mises caucus or whatever. I don't even know the different strains of libertarian thought. But if you believe in the existence of a nation state and like that the federal government and it should exist in the context of America, and that we ought to have like government doing some stuff, like Ron Paul, for example, and Rand Paul, you would agree those are like the more libertarian members we have in Congress, correct? And Thomas Massey. But they still believe that we should have like a military, and we should do things in the best interest of America. They still consider themselves America first. And so, maybe there are some libertarians who would fit that mold, but most people in this country, including this is my intuition, what I gather is most libertarians believe in a role for the state, and that the state should be protected, and that like maybe it should be less involved in stuff, but we should still have a government that's looking out for the interests of its people in the areas in which are most needed, like the army. So that's why I say what I say. Not that there aren't people for whom it would apply, but
I agree. I agree that political corporatism applies to most societies throughout human history, even monarchic societies or pre-city state societies, even tribal societies. If they have like a chieftain, and if they have like a shaman and a council of elders, and they advocate for the overall general health of their society, they could be argued to be politically corporatist.
Okay, got
I
it.
agree.
Then I understand it.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to hit on the second part, because the second part is where it goes crazy. All right. So fascists do believe in what I call, and I think what they call, flexible authoritarianism, which means that we are captured by these calcified institutions that limit the greatness and the power of the individual. And actually, while fascists are authoritarian societies, it is actually the role of great individuals Individuals serve as cogs within the political corporative framework. So if you want to be a cop, you're a white blood cell. If you want to be a moneymaker, you're a part of the heart. If you want to be work in hospice or nursing or whatever, you're a part of the intestines, right? You either defer to the larger corporative body, or if you're truly great, you become a leader of the corporative body. You fight for your right to become a part of the brain. And that's what great men do. That's what great, powerful men do. And so the ascent to power is not prescribed. This is kind of like Nietzschean will to power shit, okay? So this is actually 3 maps of how people climb to power that are fascist, okay? And I think this is Hitler, I think this is Mussolini, and I think this is Donald Trump, by the way. So with Hitler, he was a part of the masses. He served in the military. He served in the military. He became a part of a paramilitary organization. He used that in order to become, I think, chancellor of a representative body. And then once he was chancellor, he appointed himself the supreme ruler of Germany, and he had effectively uncontested power. And everything deferred to him through his cult of personality and charisma. That was his ascent to power. And then he did whatever was necessary in order to maintain power. Whereas, as you mentioned with Mussolini, Mussolini did something similar. He formed his own paramilitary organization. He became some kind of political representative. And then he became, I forget what his title was within Italy. But then you're right. He shared power with the monarchy, and he shared power with the church, because that was necessary in order for him to maintain his fascist power. And then with Donald Trump, arguably, I think Donald Trump is effectively a failed fascist. He's not very good at it. Donald Trump jumped straight from the plebeian masses to, and obviously he was quite a rich man, but I'm just saying he didn't have that much political power. Through populism, he jumped straight from the plebeian masses into the presidency, but then he tried to reshape the judiciary, the elected bodies, the security apparatus, and the paramilitary organizations like ICE. He tried to reshape them in his own image in order to solidify his power. Now, he's been checked by the judiciary. He's been checked by Congress. He's been checked by these institutions. But I don't think that's because he wouldn't want to be Mussolini if he could. It's not because he wouldn't want to be Hitler if he could. It's because our social institutions are powerful enough to check his individual will to power. Okay? So the reason why I'm bringing this up is because if you think about political corporatism and flexible authoritarianism, they capture Franco. They capture Chile. They capture Pinochet. They capture, to some degree, authoritarian leaders within communist society. But that's also where socialists argue, because they didn't achieve socialism and didn't achieve communism, they're not real socialists. They're not real communists.
And it captures J.D. Vance.
It does capture J.D. Vance, absolutely.
So it doesn't capture Gavin Newsom. And so you would say that so you're considering voting for a fascist Obama over a Democrat.
And weirdly enough, here's the other thing. This is why I like this definition so well. And you don't, if you decide you're like, hey, you don't even like this conversation, and you're going to forget everything that I told.
I'm not saying that. The reason I'm laughing, Connor, is because listen, I like you. You came at me, that my definition, when I was just getting off the ground running, I was using too many words. You've drawn 2 separate diagrams and gone through a historical analysis, which there's nothing wrong with inherently, but like, just
my definition is still 5 words.
But be aware, you've been given the space to build out your definition and justify and all that stuff. I was 8 words into what I was saying, and you said this is too many words. So 1, that's why I laugh, and then number 2, the same kind of like argument that people will make is like, it's too broad, could be levied at you, but maybe you wouldn't recognize the legitimacy of those criticisms because you just think it's how it tracks how people use the term, and it captures the cases that people use when they mean fascist. And so the only reason I'm saying this is you were coming at me as like, your definition sucks. I can't believe you're so embarrassing. You came out there, but like this definition has arguably like the same criticisms that you were levying falsely, I think, in my direction.
I don't agree. The reason why I don't agree is because my definition is 5 words, okay? However, if you want to understand the concepts, then the concepts take a few minutes to explain. I've probably been talking for 5-10 minutes, right?
Yeah, but just because it's 5 words doesn't mean it's better.
Are complex, right. But the definition is tight.
Okay, but if a definition needs, Like, imagine that you had as a definition for human.
I don't want to imagine.
I'm going to let you. I just want to make the point.
All right.
If your definition of human was two-legged mammal, well, you'd be like, well, that's a tight definition. That's like a really good tight definition. But no one would say that, right? Right, because it's not tracking usage. So whether something is tight or not, like it's not a virtue for a definition to be small if it's
to be tight and accurate.
It needs to actually track usage. And so I don't see it as virtuous that your definition when you list it out is 5-6 words or whatever. Doesn't make it better. What makes it better or worse?
I'm trying to popularize this usage.
Oh, so you acknowledge it's not popular. Your usage is unpopular.
Well, I mean, I would actually argue that fascism is like an esoteric.
Can you answer the question? Do you think your usage is popular?
No.
All right. So doesn't that mean that your usage is wrong?
No.
Okay.
Okay. I'll tell you why too. So the reason why my usage isn't wrong. Number one, I'm going to point this out as well. Within this drawing, you actually don't see the Shah of Iran. Not the Shah of Iran. You don't see the current Iranian regime.
Why not?
The reason why?
Yeah.
Because they have a very formalized, rigid religious political structure that cannot be obstructed. Their will to power is not that of the individual. Their will to power is a very formalized, unchangeable theocratic structure. So if anybody actually tried to disrupt that structure, where they said, actually, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and ban the Ayatollahs. I'm going to go ahead and ban the Council of Imams. I'm going to become the solitary leader of Iran.
Wait, that doesn't make any sense.
Rejected by the culture.
Wait a second. No. Iran is a complex and sophisticated society, and there are absolutely checks both internally and externally on the leaders' hold to power.
Yeah, that's why I'm saying they're not fascists.
No, but that was true of even Hitler internally. Hitler.
No.
Hang on a second. Hitler had constraints. He operated within constraints, but to the extent that he didn't, he had less constraints than the Iranian government. Do you think that Hitler had more constraints?
No, I think Hitler had less constraints than the Iranian government.
Okay, so then in what sense is the fact that there's little constraints in Iran make it that
I think there's heavy constraints.
Oh. Then help me. So there are constraints on who?
I would say the entire formalized structure. If there was a president of Iran who walked away from the Quran and said the Quran was no longer important, or if there was a supreme leader of Iran or whatever, the Ayatollahs, if they said, I'm going to reject all the councils of the Ayatollahs, they themselves would be rejected by the structure. They don't live in a fascist structure. Whereas Hitler and Trump, to some degree, their leaders and their cult of personality bends to their vision of reality.
So the fact that they can mold structures more, that's the flexibleness of it?
I would say so, yeah. That being said, there is pragmatic reality. So for instance, Benito Mussolini would not be able to abolish the monarchy and would not be able to abolish the church and maintain power. There's limits to, weirdly enough, there's even limits to a dictator, but the dictator, a fascist in particular, they will say, that's why it's flexible. They push where they can. They accept what they cannot change.
Here's why I don't think this is relevant, is because you're a fascist before you get into power and realize the nature of your constraints, right? You can be a fascist person. Hitler was a fascist before he achieved power in Germany itself. That's why it's important for me to start with, this is a political ideology. It's a dispositional attitude that humans have regarding a set
I agree. It's a dispositional attitude, 100%.
Right. So whether or not you are actually constrained, I don't view that as super, super relevant. It's your beliefs.
The reason, if we're talking about relevance to the definition of an individual who may or may not be fascist, I agree with you that it's not pertinent in that level.
Oh, okay. You mean the regime?
The only way that I think it's pertinent is in an analysis on their impact. So for instance, I think that Donald Trump is fascistic. I think that JD Vance is fascistic.
But we don't live in a fascist
However,
state.
I do not think that
I
they
agree
have
with that.
achieved a fascist power inside the United States because of the constraints that have been placed upon them.
Yeah, I don't think that they've been able to execute that vision and that the country is a fascist state. I would agree with that.
Okay. So right there, I'm kind of done with the definitional stuff and even that stuff. But I want to explain real quick why I think that why I think that the definition is apt. So if you read Benito Mussolini, which I read The Doctrines of Fascism. That book is incoherent. It is fucking incoherent. He waffles back and forth on like current Italian politics, the history of like the Italian state, the people who have tried to suppress his power, how he was able to get past them. There's actually no code. Like if it was a Bible, he never wrote down the 10 Commandments. He just like off the top of his brain just described reality as he perceived it. It was not very good. Same thing with Mein Kampf. Mein Kampf is very similar, where it's effectively like a historical autobiography of Hitler. There's he doesn't say at any point to my knowledge, he doesn't say like, oh, fascism, by the way, political corporatism, flexible authoritarianism, this is how you seize power. This is how I plan on seizing power. Matter of fact, I stopped reading Mein Kampf because the last 30 to 40% was literally just shit talking Jews. And it was crazy how he came up with like new ways to shit talk Jews that had nothing to do with politics. Okay. However, Giovanni Gentile, who philosophically preceded both Hitler and Mussolini, described this system.
You know, he's a contemporary of Mussolini. Come on.
No, he's a contemporary. But I'm saying that Giovanni Gentile, was the guy who actually formalized the doctrine and didn't cover it in so much shit of contemporary politics as to make it incomprehensible.
Yeah, but what makes him authoritative, right?
The fact that, in my opinion, and I think historical consensus, that if you look at Pinochet, if you look at Franco, if you look at Mussolini, if you look at Hitler, they all executed the political corporatist flexible authoritarian model. And there are other right-wing authoritarians who did not execute that model.
Yeah, but like I could say a bunch of things that are similar about those regimes in other respects. You know, they also all provided water to their people, and they also all built roads, and so that.
Yeah, but I think these things are intrinsic. So, for instance, like you and I both agree that ultranationalism is a necessary precursor of fascism. I would argue that political corporatism and ultranationalism might miss each other in the details, but they're almost synonyms. Also, you said that an authoritarian government is a necessary precursor for fascism. I agree. I think authoritarianism is key to fascism. And it's part of the flexible authoritarianism. And then anti-communism, I kind of described the way that fascists perceive power and the greatness of the individual. Anti-communism is philosophically antithetical to that. So your core definition matches my core definition.
Oh, well, I'm glad to hear it. Then it's not stupid. And therefore, that your criticism of it was, a bit premature, I think. But separate and apart from that,
you're accurate. I just think saying flexible authoritarianism and political corporatism is both more accurate and more succinct.
Perhaps, but when I say that, like the Giovanni Gentile people who are like, oh, you have to look at Giovanni Gentile, I ask like, why is his iteration of because he was given like different roles in the Italian government. Ultimately, I think he was sacked in like education and stuff like that. Why do we take his distillation as authoritative? And you say something to like effective, well, there's a consensus among academics for something. I don't know. But that's what I mean. To say something is authoritative with respect to semantic analysis is to have some reference point. And I think most people use when they say that the word means something, they are talking about some kind of usage or consensus on what that thing is. And that consensus is either, so when you say like your definition sucks because XYZ, I'm just trying to capture how the term is used. And I think something like, a political ideology similar to Mussolini and Hitler, that is tracking usage. And people might disagree in the weeds, and unpacking that might be incredibly hard, and there'll be a lot of disagreement about what it, but like on the semantic analysis, I don't think that there's a basis to say that definition, quote unquote, sucks.
Yeah, maybe I'm missing you a little bit, but what I hear when you say, oh, like common verbiage or common usage or this isn't how people use the word or something like that. There's a shitload of words that we use in common verbiage that aren't accurate at fucking all.
Does that
and
mean
yet
not
we're
accurate?
describing
What do you
like
mean that's not?
phenomena.
What do you mean it's not accurate?
So for instance, if I say based and I mean cool, like that doesn't track. Just because everybody uses base doesn't mean that like using base is appropriate or accurate. You know what I'm saying?
Appropriate and accurate, with respect to what? That's what I'm trying to say. Is like words don't have intrinsic meanings.
But I'm saying, but hold on. Actually, I know how to address this more accurately. So you're saying of what relevance is the Gentilian use of the word fascism if it doesn't map onto something real? Okay.
Wait, no. But it doesn't map onto usage either in a technical or general sense.
Okay. I'm not trying to dodge. I'm just trying to use an analogy. To me, an analogistic question would be, why are we referencing Marx when we refer to socialism? Because obviously socialism is just when the government does stuff.
Well, that's precisely my point. That you can say that there's
saying socialism is when the government does stuff is a really bad definition of socialism.
When you say it's bad, what do you mean?
I mean that it's inaccurate.
Inaccurate with respect to what? You see my point?
It's inaccurate in reference to the people who use the term socialism and the political ideology that they advocate for.
It might be inaccurate. Wait, well, hang on. That's not true of the people who use it that way, right? So if we're taking this ultimately...
but those people are dumb.
Why? If what they mean by socialism is something different than what you mean, how does that make them dumb? They might grant that they use socialism in a different...
studied what the word means. They haven't looked at the historical context. They haven't looked at anything. They just use it.
What I'm saying is like there is no objective definition of the term socialism. That definition has a technical usage.
But you know that there's better and worse definitions, right?
With respect to a usage. That's what I mean. Or you can say with Marx's usage and be specific about it.
What I'm saying is, this is what I'm saying. Because I don't know how we're getting lost here, and I feel like it's borderline pedantry. So
no, I think this is key. I think 80% of political debates going like our whole thing when we had the discussion about socialism with Destiny. Remember that shit? This was all semantic. None of it was substantive. It was all about what the term socialist ought mean, whether we should like does socialism entail authoritarianism? And it was like 99% semantic. And even at one point, there was even an internal like inconsistency about different subcategories like Marxist-Leninism and conflating that with communism, which
I disagree.
I understand to be different. Okay, well then you disagree, but I think that this is not pedantry. This is where most of the conversation ground down into, and you started a semantic conversation with me, and that's therefore what we have to go on. And when you say your definition is more correct, more accurate, or the socialists today are being inaccurate with their definition of socialist, I ask with respect to what? With respect to what?
Okay. Give me rope.
Okay.
Give me some rope. So socialism in the beginning, when the world was made. So in the beginning, in the 19th century, people recognized that there were contradictions in capitalism that made the vast majority of people fucking miserable. Okay. The working class was fucking miserable and they wanted to kill themselves, even though they had more wealth was being generated than at any time in human history. And so what they said is capitalism is not enough. So how do we emancipate, meaning make the workers free from the oppressions of capitalism? That's what every socialist cared about. And there were pre-Marxist socialists.
Are you trolling me right now?
I'm not.
You're trolling me. You're trolling me. I can't believe you're doing this right now.
No, I am and I'm not. I'm trolling you in the sense that I know that I always go back to like history or I always go back to shit, but I'm not trolling you in that I think that this is actually pertinent to whether or not you understand what socialism is. Like a matter of fact, I can do the 5-second definition. Socialism is the attempt to emancipate the working class from the oppressions of capitalism.
Sorry, what is that a question?
No, that's a statement.
I don't know how it's relevant. The question I'm basically asking, and a commentator says, so this commentator, wait a second. I just want to address this commentator. So people use the word supposedly as a malapropism are objectively wrong, even if the usage is common enough. So this is where the problem is, because the question I'm asking is not whether historically your definition is grounded in how people used to use the term or how people, the origin of it at all. The question is there such thing as being objectively wrong about a word's meaning? And I think if that is with respect to a usage, then yes, I think that there's a way to be objectively incorrect about a usage with respect to what you're using that term to mean currently. But I don't believe that at the base there's some objectively wrong way to characterize the meaning of terms beyond that. And so when you talk about the origin of a word and this is how it started, okay, like you could go even back further and say like social started when the first monkey looked at another monkey's nipple and then like rubbed their belly and they're like, oh, I like this kind of like cooperation. And that's where like these words come from utterances that primates made, and there's no like objective meaning to them. And what the words mean are how they're used and mapped onto concepts.
I don't know why you're appealing to this. So maybe you can demonstrate.
No, I'm saying the origin is kind of irrelevant to the point.
It's relevant to me understanding the point. So I would say that socialism is trying to free humanity from the oppressions of capitalism. That's what every socialist is trying to do. Okay. Now that's not the way it's commonly used.
Wait,
I'm not done yet.
Okay.
I'm not done. The way that it's commonly used is socialism is when the government does stuff. Which definition do you think is more accurate or better, and why? Because more people say socialism is when the government does stuff than they say that socialism is trying to free humanity from the oppressions of capitalism. So which one's better in your opinion?
When you say better, what do you mean?
I mean, which one captures the essence of the thing that I'm describing?
Captures the essence, meaning...
Yeah, like a blue whale. Like a blue whale is a thing that swims in the ocean versus a blue whale is a blue mammal that gives live birth that weighs approximately 1,500 pounds that lives in the ocean and eats kale.
It's a meta question.
Definition?
When you say better definition, you're asking me something like either which of them is more accurate to how people use the term usage, or you're asking me some other thing that I don't understand. I don't understand what you're asking other than that, which is what ought we use this utterance.
So you just defer to usage at all times. So the entire world is lobotomized. Okay. There's one guy left. It's me. I'm the one person without a lobotomy. And I have like the access to all the history of the world. And I've read every socialist thinker in the history of socialism and communism. Okay. But there's 7 billion lobotomites with a 60 IQ walking around me. And they say, socialism is when the government does stuff. And then I say, no, there's actually like a rich history of trying to free people from the oppressions of capitalism. They're right. And I'm wrong.
It depends what question you're asking.
More of them than me.
Wait, no. It depends on what you're asking, Connor. If by you're right, it means what is ordinary usage, who's correct with respect to ordinary usage, which is what I typically understand. What does a word mean to mean like that? If then you are wrong, then they are correct.
Yeah.
Now, if the question
are correct, I think this is incredibly.
Hang on a second. Hang on. No.
This is a dumb way to perceive reality.
Hey,
3/4 of the population of the planet are lobotomites.
This is crazy.
So I don't know why you're defending lobotomites.
Wait, no. I'm just trying to interpret what you mean by the question. When you say whose definition is better, what are you asking?
I'm asking which one captures the essence of the thing better.
I don't know what that means independent of usage. Now, maybe you could say historic usage. My definition is better.
I get it. You're a Democrat.
No, what does it mean? What does it mean for a word, independent of its meaning and its baggage, to better represent a concept? I don't understand absent usage.
Accurate.
Accurate with respect to what? What do you mean by this?
Utterances. Okay, this is a scalpel. Okay, or actually, I think this is like a dental tool. It's a home dentistry tool.
Yeah.
So I could say this is a stainless steel dentistry tool.
Oh my.
Okay.
God. Yeah.
And let's say 100 people come up and they're like, "No, that's a booger picker 3000. We fucking love booger picker 3000s. This is awesome." You're saying because there's 100 people saying that this is a booger picker. And I'm saying this is a home dentistry.
You don't even understand what's going on right now.
Are correct.
No,
because that's the common usage. And that's I hate to say it, that's stupid as fuck. Stupid.
No, I'm not proposing any normative thing. You don't understand what I'm so take a second, stop and listen to what I'm saying. What I'm telling you isn't that I have a normative disposition one way or the other. What I'm telling you is
I don't even know what normative means.
Oughts. Do you understand what an ought is?
Sure.
Okay,
Yeah.
so then you understand what
Should.
normative means. Should, yeah. So, when I'm not making an odd argument right now. I'm asking you, when you ask the question, which of these meanings, definitions, is more correct, I don't understand what you're asking if it's not with reference to a usage, either common, historical, or technical. That I do not understand the question of, is this definition more correct, separate and apart from with reference to a usage. Now, if you mean something else by, is this a better definition, then you need to explain that concept to me because I don't understand.
Okay. I think I understand how to solve this. Technically and historically, I think that the socialism is the attempt to emancipate humanity from the oppressions of capitalism. I think that is a better definition. I think
better
that
because
wait.
Better because
domain?
Better because the experts and historians that you're citing use the term that way, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So it is grounding down into usage, correct?
But
yes.
Wouldn't
yes it is
no the average person?
I'm not that's why I differentiated types of usage, that there's common usage, and that's why I was saying when you're doing the lobotomized example, that if what you're asking by is the definition better, if you're asking common usage, then you're wrong. Now, if you were asking that better with respect to technical or historical usage, the God on high who knows all that who does all the reading, they'd be correct. But ultimately, it is grounding down into some form of usage, and usually people.
Why do you have any deference for common usage?
Because that's how human beings communicate, and that's how I understand. Because that's when I say it's deference, it's not a normative thing. It's just me trying to understand when people are talking to me, and they say, J.D. Vance is a fascist. What do they mean by that? Or when they say to me, hey, there's a blue whale outside in the harbor right now, because it's the normative, it's just a norm. It's not some, it's like a standard that we use to communicate concept with it, but there's not like an intrinsic value in calling a whale a whale. It just we've done.
Okay. I think what's going on, which is frustrating the fuck out of me, is that I think you're an intelligent guy. Okay. I think you are capable of understanding common usage. I think you're capable of understanding technical usage. I think you're capable of understanding historical usage. And when the average person, a lobotomite on the street, says, I think J.D. Vance is a fascist, what they're saying is they think J.D. Vance is a vague flavor of right-wing authoritarian because they haven't studied the history, they haven't studied Gentile, they haven't studied all this shit, right?
Then they're correct, right? If what they mean is that, then they're correct.
Common usage, they are correct.
Okay, cool.
Unfortunately, though, because they have no interest in history and no interest in technicality, they are missing out on a much richer and deeper conversation, which is the effect that not only is J.D. Vance some vague right-wing authoritarian, he might actually be a political corporatist. He might actually believe in this conception of the nation state as an organized, harmonious body. Not just that, he might be a flexible authoritarian, which means that if he can get away with sneaking past the Constitution of the United States, he will. But if he can't, then he might pay it deference. And if you understand the historical and technical definition of fascism, you can have a richer, deeper, more accurate understanding of who and what J.D. Vance is.
I agree with that. Totally agree with that.
Okay.
But I don't think that's what happened. But you were going after Destiny and Tim Miller, and I'm like, leave them alone, because what they're doing, I think, is why.
I will not. I think Tim Miller is completely ignorant of the historical and technical usage of the word fascism.
Why?
And he is a thought leader in my political sphere, and he can eat a dick for not knowing better.
But he comes to the same conclusions you do.
That doesn't matter. If you're an idiot, but you come to the wrong, if you're an idiot, but you come to the right conclusions, you just as easily can be led astray to wrong.
Yeah, I know, but this is kind of your argument. You're like, you fucking idiot, Tim Miller and Destiny. You're using Umberto Eco when you should be using flexible authoritarianism and political.
When you should be using Gentile. Yep.
But the thing is, then you also acknowledge that yours is like a pretty esoteric definition, one that you're trying to popularize because it's not been taken up and isn't found in any dictionary. It's not found in any academic treatise. Okay, so then it's not a usage that, like, when you say you guys are all idiots, this is a frindle, it's not a pen. That's a deep cut reference. I don't know if you guys know what that fucking reference is, but if all
Is
of
it
a
a kind
sudden,
of pen?
if someone came up to you and was like, "You idiot! Why do you keep calling this a pen? That's not a pen. It's a frindle. It's a frindle, you idiot!" I'm like, "What do you mean it's a frindle? I don't know that it's a frindle." And they're like, "Oh yeah, it is. That's the best definition. It's a frindle." And I'm like, "Well, why is it the best definition?" You're like, "Does anyone else call it frindle?" No. I'm trying to popularize it. Can I find it in any dictionary? No. I'm trying to make this be frindle.
You can't find it in the definition.
So that's what you're saying to me. That's what it's like talking to you right now.
Fascism and communism, both historically and technically.
Okay,
You can't.
That's your claim. Where is? Find me a textbook that says flexible authoritarianism and political corporatism is the definition of fascism. You won't. I mean, if you do, I'll give you $50. If you find an academic treatise that says that, I'll give you $50 because I don't think you're going to find it. Okay. And if you acknowledge, if you do a search, an exhaustive search, and you say, "Can I find a single academic paper, a treatise, somewhere that says fascism is flexible authoritarianism and political corporatism," then I think maybe you have some basis, but I think it's far from like a consensus view or whatever. But certainly you are on no better ground than someone like Destiny or Tim Miller, because you're just essentially saying this is a frindle. I want to popularize it, but I acknowledge that it's not been taken up by the academy or by the common people. And but you should still. You're an idiot for not calling this a frindle.
Okay. I think we're close enough that I don't need to fight anymore. So
This is interesting. I'm obsessed with these conversations. I love this because I think a lot of it does ground out into semantics and shit. I'm trying to use these conversations that we're having to expose what I think is a bias that a lot of people have, and maybe it's this feeling that we should return to normalcy post-Trump, and that the problem really lies at the feet of Trump as opposed to a broader issue with the Republican Party. And some of that is captured in these like language discussions that we have, and what I consider kind of trivial issues. And maybe I'm naive for thinking they're trivial, but like the notion that it would be disqualifying for Gavin Newsom to vote for him because he had a meeting with Hassan, or because they're using a word in a different, like all this stuff I think is interesting personally to me, but the conversations I hope are helpful to suss out some issues I have with the current meta on the Republican Party. And of some of these, I don't consider you an enlightened centrist. I view you as a closeted Democrat that wants to maintain your identity desperately. That doesn't mean I don't like you and I don't really enjoy these conversations, or that I think that you're stupid or anything.
Okay, so if the Democrats, let's say that's true. Let's say I'm a closeted Democrat. All you have to do is get the party to completely change its stance on understanding firearms and civilian firearm ownership and violence. All you have to do is give me an N-word pass that allows me to say the A. I don't need the ER. I just need the A. Then you need to acknowledge that we should be a civic nationalist society, meaning that we should be promoting Americanism as an ideology within public schools. And then, yeah, maybe we could talk.
And preserve the white race, right?
I mean, a plurality, Northern European plurality.
That's crazy. You said that. I mean, you really think that America should have as one of its policy considerations preserving the white race as a plurality?
Yeah. Yep.
Isn't that the definition?
I think you're making it incredibly simple to make it as hyperbolic as possible. But yeah, I think that if I said, let's take 100 million Middle Eastern and North African people tomorrow, you'd be like, no, that's crazy. Like we need to be able to integrate people into our culture.
Yeah, but that's not like racial, is it? Do you view racial as essential to
racial? No, it's not racial.
No, but you said that it's racial.
I don't have a hostility to Hispanics at all. Like I actually view, so the way that I view it is Northern Europeans are a English-based colonial project. Central and South America are a Spanish-based colonial project. Spain is still a part of Europe. So just because like Hispanics are mixed with Native Americans, indigenous Americans, and they're also mixed with the slave population imported over from Africa, they're not hostile to my political project. They're probably intrinsic to my political project. So I think where a lot of like national conservatives go wrong is they identify Northern European whiteness as like this thing that must be preserved at all costs.
So I'm not part of that plurality, right? You don't consider me white, so I don't need to be preserved. People like me.
Well, I mean, it depends on whether you're Peruvian, right? So
Peruvians are mostly brown. I have, yeah. So you wouldn't consider me part of your.
I wouldn't consider you a part of the Northern European plurality, but I probably would consider you a part of the European colonial majority that I might want to maintain over the next 1,000 years.
Because my skin is relatively more pale than most Peruvians.
But again, like a brown Peruvian who was American civic nationalist, that's my fellow that's a brother or a sister.
But you do want to preserve the white race
preservation
plurality.
Of the Constitution of the United States.
I know, but you did just say you want to preserve the white race plurality on the basis of race.
Well, hold on. 1,000 years from now, I won't care. Like, let's say that I was like I was immortal. I would actually hope and pray that Americans as a melting pot society melt. And that, like, ultimately we're just like, damn, all that racial shit from a few centuries ago or a few millennia ago, that's for the birds. Who gives a fuck? We're all American. That's a society that I would want to aim towards. I just don't think we're there yet. Okay,
but yeah, wouldn't that necessitate like integrating and everyone marrying everybody and then like adopting devotion to the white plurality? It seems like if you're trying to
it's not even devotion to the white plurality. It's devotion, in my opinion, is to the Constitution of the United States. If and which can be amended, by the way,
which is racial, which is premised on racial. I mean, that's a little bit of a self-report.
No. So for instance, let's say once again, I brought up like 100 million Chinese people coming overnight, or 100 million Middle Eastern and North African people coming overnight. Obviously, that would be like let's put it mildly, that would be an integrative challenge. Integrating 100 million people from a different culture in a different religious context.
Yeah, but presumably you don't think it's intrinsically racial there. It's
no, it's not intrinsically racial. No, there's Iranians and Chinese and black people who are more patriotic than me.
Okay, but then why bite the bullet and say I want to preserve the white plurality when what you should be saying is, because that's a racial desire, when what you should be saying is that's a proxy, I want to preserve the culture. The thing is, I think that it's a lot of the thing is, you say it's a proxy. But you say it's a proxy, but usually, I don't know what it is about you, or maybe you are being genuine, but usually the proxy is the other way around. They'll say, we need to preserve the cultural integrity of America, and what they mean is race. That I think that, for example, yeah, I think that's...
No. I agree with you that many national conservatives and many right-wingers use cultural tradition as a proxy for race. I agree.
And you're using, but you understand what you're doing. You're using race as a proxy for culture.
I'm doing the invert, and I'm actually saying that I don't actually care about race that much in the long term. Yeah,
but in the short term, you do.
Yeah, integration. Integration is a huge project. We do it better than everybody else, but we do it better than everybody else because up until now we've been relatively intentional about it. I care about that intentionality.
What a wild combo. Hey man, this was great.
Yeah, I had fun too.
We should we took a lot of like agreeing sessions for a while there, but this is really, I think we can decompress with them shitting on MAGA at some point, but
I'm happy we can finally fight.
Yeah.
It's good.
They're bizarre fights. These are like I'm flabbergasted after I have these conversations. I'm like, what just happened? Then I think about that. I'm like, did I dream that conversation? So that's, I don't know.
I felt the same way. That's why I drew a chart. When we were done with the last conversation, I was like, we basically just had a schizophrenic conversation where we were jumping from variable to variable to variable about a dozen political personalities and why I was willing to vote for them, but not them, and this back. And I know when there isn't like a narrative through line that feels like you could follow it coherently, I kind of know that in the back of my mind. And so there was this like splinter in my brain that needed to resolve the incoherence, which is why I drew the chart. And I don't even think we're necessarily done with that. Like you brought up, there's a couple of flaws in the chart that need to be amended for accuracy's sake.
Also, we need to revisit your percentage on Nick Fuentes. You said 30% of the time he's based. That seems like a lot.
Sure. So but the whole point is like, there's debating to win and debating to understand. And part of the reason why I like talking with Pisco, even when we passionately disagree about stuff, and he tries to dunk on me and he calls me an arsler.
I've not called you that. No, I haven't.
I know.
You've called me the N-word.
With an A.
Yeah.
It's a term of endearment.
Okay.
So anyways, but the point is it sharpens your argumentation, because if you go in with this flat-footed into a debate where somebody's trying to stomp you out, you're just going to get stomped out. Whereas if you have a friend who likes to stomp you out on occasion, but he's also just challenging your bullshit, it makes you sharper. So I appreciate that about our conversations.
Well, my guy, we'll talk soon. Have send my full regards to Mrs. Points. Hope you have a
I
good
will.
time with your fam, and talk soon.
Thank you, King. Parasocial love. We'll talk soon.
Later.
Bye, bud.
Bye. That was very interesting situation. What did you guys think? What are your reactions? I was not planning on that conversation. I had a whole different content stream that I think I'm gonna have to put off. Maybe I'll have time tonight to do what I was planning. But it totally derailed my activities because I just can't stop sometimes. Sometimes it's just like I hear these ridiculous things and what a wild conversation. Call out good looka. He thinks words have objective definitions. Yeah, I just don't know what's like meant by that. It's like the word whale objectively means the creature with this chromosomal specification that lives in the water. It objectively means that? What do you mean by that? Objectively. So if society had evolved or whatever, or they developed in such a way that a different word, beluga, was used for all whales. I know beluga is a type of whale. Would that be objectively correct? So in what sense is it objectively correct? I don't understand these language objective people. I really don't. It's wild to use race as a proxy for integration rather than just saying integration. Yeah, I don't like, you don't have to, you don't have to say that we want white people to be preserved for integration. You can just say we want to integrate. You don't have to say that. But maybe he means it. Maybe he thinks that we should consciously try to preserve the white character of the plurality of America in the short term. What do you think about objective? Do you mean ultimate truth beyond human comprehension? Do you mean when I think of objective, it means not mind dependent. That's how I understand objective. Or not contingent is how it's often used. Not based on a cause, just is. And that I don't understand. I don't really have an understanding of like uncaused things that are not caused. I don't really know that that's a coherent thought. I struggle with it, to be honest. Like an uncaused causer. You'll often hear about that for God. In the normal usage, I think objective is like mind independent. But of course, usage is intersubjective, not objective. You feel like you're trolling? No, I feel like I'm being trolled. I have like almost like a sincerity problem where sometimes it's hard for me not to be sincere. And yeah, I agree with Sema Ford that in these debates, oftentimes objective means I'm correct and what I say is fundamental and true all the time, no matter what, and therefore you must agree with me because I'm objective and you're not objective. I basically think it's sophistry or it's incoherent. Objective in like the uncaused and contingent, like counter to contingent, that's something I don't understand, is like the notion that something has no cause, has no referent, or doesn't refer, it just is in and of itself. That isn't like subject to some cause in our subjective experience. Thank you so much for the sub on Twitch. Appreciate you guys' support. Tons of support today. Great support. Great what you guys are doing. Please, we posted a reaction video to the WIC TV panel about where the lawyers went crazy in front of Soy Pill and Destiny. So give that a like if you like that content. But the reason I uploaded that edit was because there was a comment on one of the shorts that we did from that was like, could you please make this an edit? So I read a lot of the comments. I'm not going to say I read all of them, but I read the comments. So if you have like recommendations of things you'd like to see me do or whatever, I'm not saying I'll do everything, but I do read them. And so that edit specifically, I did it because someone recommended it and wanted it to see the full thing instead of like going through the VOD. So I encourage you, like, comment, and subscribe if you want to see more shit. Hopefully tonight we'll be able to do what I was planning to do this morning. Maybe there'll be more news or something will come up. But yeah, we did call-ins yesterday, so I probably won't do call-ins. Sometimes you guys are too much agreeers and a lot of yapping. I know that I yap a lot, but there's some yappers. Connor's a bit of a yapper. In my day, so you want to know why this? Well, when socialism was first invented, Marx that morning had a bagel. And he put butter on that bagel, even though he was lactose intolerant. So it tells you, even from the beginning, communism was shit. Like, okay. Anyway, love you guys very much. Like the channel, do all the things. I appreciate you so much. Is there someone I can raid into? Some live people? To spread the love? Spread your love? Let's see. Hutch! Hell yeah. Alright, we're gonna go to Hutch. That's my boy. Tell him Daisy sent you. That's from, don't say that. I don't think he's gonna understand. That's from Hateful Eight. When you get to hell, John, tell him Daisy sent you. Remember that movie? I remember. We all remember this. Raid. So I'm doing it both on YouTube and on Twitch so we can get all the love. So just stick around for that and tell him Hutch is my boy. Raid Hutch. Why does this do this? Every morning there's a halo hanging from the corner. All right, we're raiding in Twitch and YouTube. Have a good day, guys. Be well.